indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This time, I'd like to make a motion to recess as the Board of Selectmen and convene as Board of Health.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So on the table in front of you, you'll see a copy of the current health regulations that have been adopted at the town of Alton. The reason that we're convening tonight is because we do have a new member on the board. We haven't convened in a while. The reason for that is that we haven't had any applications that have required special waivers to go in front of the board. As you know, we welcomed a new code enforcement officer and health officer, Norma Dietrich. So she has been receiving some training and information to better prepare her for her role in this as well. And like I said, this was a chance for us to convene as the board together, get a copy of the current regulations for you folks to refer to at your leisure. And then that way, when we do get a case that needs to come in front of the board, we'll be better prepared at that point in time.
Okay, thank you. So nothing has changed as far as the format of the definitions?
No, this was still originally the way it was adopted. As you know, we did have some discussion last year about local oversight. Nothing had changed with this. We took a portion out and put it right back in.
That's correct.
When were these regulations adopted?
The last time was, I believe it was 2017 was the last update. But they originally, they have a signature page in the main book in the office over here that has a list of every time a change, well, their original adoption date, and then every time there was an edit and the adoption times.
Okay. And you said the code enforcement officer has been familiarized with the health regulations and gone through all of this.
Yes, and she was receiving some further training on that as well.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. Any further questions?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, then I make a motion to adjourn as the Board of Health and reconvene as the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Do we have any changes to the agenda? No changes to the agenda. Can I have an approval for the agenda as written?
Make a motion, we approve the agenda as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The public participation policy applies to all selectmen meetings. A copy is in the back of each agenda posted outside the meeting room and on our website. The town clerk tax collector's office will be closed on Wednesday, April 17th, 2024. The staff will be attending the tax collector's spring workshop. This time we're going to open up to a public input on agenda items only for 3 minutes. Seeing no one, we'll close the public input. And we have no appointments this evening.
No.
We'll go right into new business. Lake Winnipesaukee Association grant presentation.
Let's see, just because the microphone's right there.
Just for a minute. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
Yep. I am Pat Tarpey. I am the president of the Lake Winnipesaukee Association. And I'm here to talk to you about a new project that we will be beginning, and it involves Alton. So I wanted to make you aware of it and hopefully get some assistance with getting members of Alton to be on the steering committees. So I know you were involved with the Merry Meeting River Watershed Plan.
Yes.
So our organization has been doing these watershed plans for Lake Winnipesaukee for 10 years. A little over that, because the lake's so big, we break it down into smaller bays.
Mhm.
So we've completed 6 plans so far, and there are 4 areas of the lake remaining to be done. Wolfboro Bay, Alton Bay, the Broads, and Center Harbor Bay. We're currently working with the town of Wolfboro on the plan for Wolfboro Bay. So they obtained some funding for that. But our organization recently obtained some EPA funding, $500,000, to do the Broads, Alton Bay, and Center Harbor Bay. And Alton actually has quite a large portion of the Broads, and Alton Bay is almost all Alton, so. This will tie in nicely with the Merry Meeting River Plan, which was completed a couple of years ago. Yeah.
2021, I think.
As well as, you know, since Alton Bay does feed into the Broads and the Wolfboro Bay feeds into the Broads, so to Center Harbor Bay, you can see
Mhm.
the maps there. This will complete all the plans for Winnipesaukee. I'm actually going to be soliciting for more funds for the first plans that were done, which were 15 years ago, and they're very obsolete now. They weren't done to the level of detail the current plans have been done. We've already contracted with FB Environmental Associates to do this work. They did the Merry Meeting River plan. They've done actually all the plans on Winnipesaukee, so they're very familiar with the lake and all the issues with it.
So you're finding more of the bacteria in a lot of these areas, these 4 areas that you've been noticing over the last few years?
The cyanobacteria.
Cyanobacteria.
Well, the cyanobacteria, it's a kind of funny little thing because it's very transitory. Right?
Mhm.
It can appear in one place and then be gone. But for Center Harbor Bay, Lake Canesaca flows into if you've been following the news, Lake Canesaca has had consistent cyanobacteria blooms.
Mhm.
And in fact, last October, the end of October, they had a major bloom, which ended up flowing into Blackie Cove, and they had the bloom as well.
Okay.
So, you know, all this work is to identify those sources of excessive nutrients coming in
Mhm.
and come up with recommendations to mitigate it.
Identify what it is, where it's coming from, and
Yeah.
come up with
And,
solutions.
and a lot is land-based activities, but without the plan, it's the catch-22. You can't seek at least federal funding for mitigation unless you've got a plan.
Mhm. And you've already been approved for the $500,000 grant.
Yep.
And for this
Yep.
project.
Yep.
And that's for 2 years, 1 year?
2 years is what we're
2
estimating
years.
it'll take. Yep.
And you just need a committee from Alton to join on with your team?
Yeah, a few residents, and because it's actually going to be 3 plans going on, there'll be 3 committees. There'll be the Broads Committee and the Alton Bay Committee,
Mhm.
and Alton should have a representative on both of those.
Okay.
And I may have already one Alton resident, Dana Huff, I think has expressed interest.
That would be Dave.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Good asset to have on your team.
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
it would, but.
No, that sounds good. Yeah, it's, like you said, we with the Merry Meeting River and worked on that and looked for correcting that if we can. And working with you and working with the association to take care of these problems.
Yep.
And do you have any other plans in the future of what you can do to treat?
Well, to treat cyanobacteria, it's really reducing the nutrient loading coming in. Lake Canesaca is going to get an alum treatment.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that I think would be feasible in Winnipesaukee due to its size, but Lake Canesaca is small enough, you can do that and it will be effective. But that's really expensive as well. That's $500,000 they're looking
Just
at.
itself, yeah.
Yep. So, you know, we're looking at, it can be drainage ditches. It can be undersized
Of course.
culverts, things
Absolutely.
that are bringing erosion and sediment into the
Yep.
lake.
And that's usually most of the problem,
Yeah, lots road related.
road related, yeah,
Mhm.
culverts. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Right,
you.
thank
For the
you.
information and we'll definitely look to see if we can get some more people for that committee.
Thanks for volunteering.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
thank you.
I'm meeting with the Conservation Commission, I think this week too.
This week?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, paramedic intercept services agreement with Frisbee Hospital, HCA update.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for your time. I'll try to be as brief as possible. Looking to update or enter into a paramedic intercept agreement with Frisbee Hospital, which parent company is HCA. Basically, if we get a paramedic intercept from Frisbee Hospital, which isn't often, I looked at the past year and a half to 2 year data set, and we average between 10 and 12 intercepts out of Frisbee. They're looking to have the ability to charge for that intercept. Other programs around us do have a intercept fee upwards of $500. So if we were to contact Concord Fire for whatever reason, if we were going to that side to a hospital, their intercept fee is about $500. This fee is only pertaining to Medicaid, Medicare patient transports. So if the medic gets on and it's a commercial insurance or self-pay, there is no invoice or charge. Basically, the issue is that through the federal government, only one entity can bill for Medicaid, Medicare transport. You have commercial insurance, we can, as the town of Alton, can bill for the BLS or the basic life support that we do, and then the hospital and or the medic service can bill for their ALS, advanced life support. Federal government does not allow that, so there's only one billing agency, and that has to be the transporting agency, which would be Alton. So basically, we would charge Medicaid or Medicare, their insurance for the transport at whatever level, BLS, ALS 1 or 2. Those are determined by what skill sets or what care is given to those patients. And that would determine the billable amount. Frisbee then would send us an invoice monthly, depending on how many there were, $175 per. We're collecting the money up front, and we would just be cutting them a check at the end of the month for their services. I'm asking permission basically because you are the agents to expend out of the ambulance revolving account. So before we entered into any agreement and getting that permission, it wasn't anything that we had budgeted for this year or under the default budget, but basically it would be a wash because we'd be getting the money from Medicaid or Medicare, and then that portion of it going to Frisbee. So that's kind of that in a nutshell, and I can answer any other questions regarding the exciting world of EMS billing.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's no money out of our pocket.
There's no money out of our pocket.
So
So
it's not
basically, we would be
budget. Yep.
charging Medicaid, Medicare, and then paying the 175.
Yep.
Very nominal. Again, we have medics on staff. We have a lot of advanced EMTs, and it was very small amount based on our run numbers that we were requesting a paramedic intercept. Could be that we have multiple patients needing advanced life, or just we don't have someone on that particular shift. So it's far and few between here in Alton that we were requesting, but just they need to update their records.
Okay.
And
So you don't see in the future, really using it all that much?
correct.
Um,
At our
okay,
current staffing model with what we have for people in Alton that have paramedic and or advanced EMT license, it's, again, I think it'll be minimal.
Okay.
Again, anything that is charged, it'll be a wash. We're not gonna lose any money on that.
Who does the accounts receivable and accounts payable? So when you receive a bill from Frisbee, obviously that needs to get processed, paid, and you need to invoice.
Correct. So our overall ambulance billing is through a third-party billing company, Comstar out of Massachusetts. We would still get our invoice from Frisbee, reconcile between what they're saying for a run number versus what Comstar has for the billing, make sure that they line up. We have an administrative assistant in-house that processes the invoices, coming here to town hall to the finance department.
And that CompStar, is that, do you pay, is it
So-
just a flat fee or is it?
5%, they charge 5% on what they collect.
Okay, so would that be something that would get picked up? How would that 5%?
So basically, we would still be we would be paying the 5% on any run that they collected. So whether it's Medicaid, Medicare, commercial insurance. So yes, we would be paying that portion of the 5% of the $175 basically would come out of our pocket
Mhm.
times 10 or 12 runs.
Okay. All right, any further questions? No, I think it's pretty straightforward. Okay. In that case, I make a motion to agree to go into a contract with paramedic intercept services, an agreement with Frisbee Hospital and HCA up for HCA.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Breeze Line, Town Hall Agreement.
Oh, we missed one.
Oh, staffing, I'm sorry, staffing for adequate fire and emergency response grant request.
Correct. Looking for permission to apply for a federal grant through FEMA. It's otherwise known as SAFER, Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response Program. It's approximately $330 million that the federal government puts out there yearly. It is highly competitive, so I'm willing to put the application in. They get over $1 billion in requests every year, so again, it can be difficult. Basically, what this program does is allow or provides the funding for payroll and associated benefits for full-time firefighters to add to the staff. The only thing it does not cover is any overtime. It is a limited grant. There are no upfront or any matching dollars required.
Just gonna ask that.
It's the performance period is basically 36 months, so it covers those wages and associated benefits from the start of the performance period for the 3 years. At the end of 3 years, there is no obligation to retain those positions. The town so chose to keep those and then encumber those into the into the budgets moving forward. That'd be on the decision you folks would have to make. But it would help if we were successful in the grant, putting additional personnel on. Depending on how many I apply for, it could be upwards of 1.2 to 1.5 million dollars overall in the grant package, whether that gets approved or not for the town. So I just wanted to, again, get permission before I hit the submit button to
Right.
the federal
Permission
government.
to submit for it.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. We allow Jim to enter, to fill out a application for this, for the grant. Who is it through? Through FEMA, you said, right?
FEMA, yes,
Through FEMA.
known as SAFER.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Jim.
That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, Breeze Line Town Hall Agreement.
Good evening. So what you have in front of you is or should have in front of you is a contract from Breeze Line. I have been in contact with our account manager at Breeze Line, who informed me that we are not currently under contract with Breeze Line and that we are overpaying for our internet. The amount that we're paying right now is $150 a month. If we enter into a 3-year contract with Breeze Line, that would bring that down to $85.98. I have an updated contract that has that amount. Basically, you eliminate the $17.99 because we would basically buy our own modem and own the modem instead of rent it from Breezeline. So to me, that's a no-brainer. I think we should absolutely do it. We'll save about $800 a year. I think
definitely.
I think it's a great move.
So on here, what is the total monthly recurring charges of 103?
Yeah, so I have an updated contract
Mhm.
that eliminates that $17.99
So
charge for
yours
the
is the
modem.
update, Okay,
Yeah,
They haven't just barely came in, but that's removing that 17.
that's removing that 17.99 there,
Yes.
okay.
that's correct.
Yep.
I got that updated contract at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
So I didn't have enough time to print it off and get it to you.
That's why I just wanted to ask that.
And you've
Yeah.
been satisfied with the BreezeLine service
Yeah,
that we've got?
and this internet connection is not going anywhere. It's literally our failover for internet here and throughout town. So it handles our public safety network, our town hall network, our voice communications. It is a staple to our operations here. So eliminate some cost and
Oh, absolutely.
keep it
Yeah,
running for the
I
next
think we
3
should go
years.
forward with it.
Yeah, I'll make
Yep.
a motion that we approve the 3-year contracts.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks.
I'd like to entertain the idea of bringing the up to motion for a bring up to old business for stormwater assessment management grant, to bring that up next.
Oh, instead.
And so they can move on. They don't have to listen to us all night.
Second that, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll move to old business and go to stormwater assessment, asset management, I mean, grant report.
Now we're gonna wanna slide over.
That way there, you guys don't have to be bored with the rest of the meeting.
Oh, yeah, come on down.
All right, we're gonna fire in the hole here with the screen. And we're also presenting, we have Sarah Ryder from NHDS is joining in and she's talking about what we're gonna be seeing here. My name is Dan Roop with Nine Bond Project Manager.
Yeah, pull that microphone around so that,
We can't hear you.
Great. We have Deb Loisel from NHDES joining us in the audience. And Emily Downward from Ty and Bond as well. Is this
it's
working on-
wireless, so
on the
you can
mic?
pull it as close to you want it, whatever you want to do.
Perfect. Okay, so we've got this going, and then I'm just gonna make sure that Sarah from NHDS is also viewing the screen. Sarah, if you cannot see anything, just give me a little shout here, but I think we should be in good shape. Before we get going, I guess, well, everyone knows Scott, but we'll let Scott maybe do a little introduction on the grant and the program.
Turn that button on the back.
So just to kind of preempt everything here, I did send in a memo, but it may not have made it into your packet due to lateness.
They
Oh,
got
did make it?
They
Okay.
did get it.
And just basically gave an overview as to what this process was, because it did start a while ago now. We've been working on it now for the past 2 years, a little over 2 years. So this was approved by the board back in March of 2022. And then was approved by Governor and Council back in June of 2022. And then we got our kickoff meeting going with our stakeholders. And that really got things rolling. And as you know, we chose to work with Tyne and Bond on that, with Dan and Emily being our principal folks there. Of course, we had Dana also helping out here and working with us as a consultant engineer for the town, which worked out very, very good because of the RFQ process in which the town went through. It allowed us to help expedite that process, which was approved by DES through that process. So there's many steps that have to happen in order to qualify these grants and going forward. So and Deb's here from DES as well. And we've been in constant communication on and off through this whole process, which has worked very, very well. I'd also like to mention, and I did mention in the memo, you know, we did have, we worked with an intern, that was actually supplied, through Tyne and Bond. We had her as a part-time employee for us, and working in conjunction with Tyne and Bond. And, that worked very, very well. And we also utilized, Amelia, Squeezy from the water department at the time. Now she's with Highway, which is great. But she was involved in the collection of data in this process for the stormwater. And I don't want to take the thunder away from Dan and Emily, because they've put together a great presentation to give you an overview. But I just wanted to call out those folks. They were instrumental in getting this data collected so that they could start to work it and process it that way. So it's been a great working relationship, and this is going to be a great working document for you going forward. You just had Ms. Tarpey here from you know, and I've worked with her over a number of different watershed studies as well. Dana, I think, is working on the Wolfboro one as a representative, basically from Alton, because it comes into that Bay Area. So this all ties in very, very well together, and I'm sure Dan and Emily will allude to that in the presentation as well. So this is a win-win situation, and it is a working document that will continue to, you know, we want to make sure we keep it alive. And I know in the last meeting that we had with Deb is that, you know, DES wants to see that as well. You know, they've invested funds into this by the grant as well as the town, which has been great. And then we want to keep this alive, and it's basically for our overall water quality for the town. So
Yes.
I'll let them go, and you know, Dan, I'll let you and Emily, you know, introduce yourselves, and then we'll, of course, we'll tap into Deb over there, because she's been a great partner in this, supporting it.
Thank you, Scott.
Appreciate it, Scott. Thanks for the introduction.
Take care of it.
Thank you.
So just a quick agenda here. We'll do some introductions, further introductions, just a brief overview of what asset management is. And then quick intro to Alton's stormwater system, and then an overview on the development of the asset management program. And then discuss recommendations from the program, and then ongoing program implementation and funding, and some next steps, and then discussion. So just some introductions here. Scott's already spoken. And so Tyne Bond, this is Dan Root from Tyne Bond. He's the project manager. And I'm Emily Downward from Tyne Bond, assistant project manager. And then, as mentioned, we have had guidance from and funding from New Hampshire DES for the program. So Deb is here. And then we also had a stakeholder group identified, which we met with for development of the program. So a list of some stakeholders are shown on the screen here. So we had several folks from different departments in town, New Hampshire DES, Alton Shores Association, KB Partners, the town's on-call planning board review consultant, and a representative from the Cyanobacteria Mitigation Steering Committee, and also the Lake Winnipesaukee Association.
Before we hop off this, Deb, did you have any words on behalf of NHDS you wanted to say at this point?
No, I would just say, in addition to myself, my colleague Sarah Ridyard, as Dan had mentioned earlier, is online with us as well, and she's been of tremendous help too. She's our sustainability engineer. She works in the wastewater engineering bureau, and she oversees this program for clean water. Clean water includes stormwater and wastewater. And I'm the stormwater coordinator. I work in the watershed management bureau, in the watershed assistance section. And I manage a lot of the stormwater funded projects through the Clean Water SRF program.
Thanks, Deb. Thank you. And as Emily's presenting, I'm just going to grab a couple of the flyers for y'all to have to when we get to that portion.
So a brief overview here of what asset management is. We have some definitions for key terms here from the New Hampshire DES Asset Management Handbook and Toolkit. So asset management is delivering a certain level of service to customers at an optimal life cycle cost and acceptable level of risk with a strategy that ensures long-term sustainability of the town's assets. And then just to define a couple terms inside that definition, level of service is the way in which the town's leaders, managers, and operators want the town's assets to perform over the long term. And life cycle cost is an estimate of a total capital operating maintenance cost for the asset over its entire operating life. So essentially, asset management is replacing reactive operation and maintenance with a proactive operation and maintenance approach. So Alton Stormwater System is composed of several different types of assets like culverts, catch basins, manholes, drop inlets, outfalls, drainage pipes, etc. And these are some images of a culvert on the right here, and then looking down into a catch basin in the center. And so the purpose of Alton Stormwater System is to manage the stormwater runoff, protect public health and safety, and preserve environmental resources. So the program was developed in several phases. So we'll give an overview here of the different phases of the project. So the first phase was the project kickoff and identifying that stakeholder group and setting a vision statement for the program, which you can see here on the screen. And then holding a level of service workshop where we met with the stakeholders and gathered input from them for developing the program and setting certain level of service goals for the project to define the level of service that we want the town's assets to provide. And phase 2 was the culvert and catch basin inventory, where we developed a online GIS mapping tool to enable the town to map assets in their stormwater system, and also an inventory form to fill out certain information for each asset as they're out in the field collecting data on that asset. And phase 3 was attending a culvert mapping and assessment training. Town staff and also time bond staff attended this training, which was conducted by the state. And they discussed how they map their culvert assets and also conduct condition assessments of those assets. So that same protocol was from the state was used for Alton's culvert assets here. And this is showing a map of all the town-owned culverts and that were mapped as part of this program, as well as many drainage structures and also closed drainage outfall systems. And phase 4 was going out and conducting the field work. So as Scott mentioned, town staff went out and conducted all the field work and mapped 386 town-owned culverts and conducted condition assessments of all of those culverts using those mapping and inventory form tools that were put together in phase 2. And these are just some quick photos of culverts found in the field. Phase 5 was follow-up field work where a time bond structural engineer went out and inspected some of the top 10 culverts identified from the initial field work to do a more in-depth structural inspection of those culverts. And phase 6 was the risk-based asset prioritization. So taking all of the data from the field work and calculating a overall risk score for those culverts, which puts together 2 different factors: a probability of failure factor, which is how likely the culvert is to fail, and then a consequence of failure factor, which is how impactful it is if that culvert fails. So if the culvert is located on a road near the fire station, if that culvert fails, then that's a very critical culvert because the fire trucks can't get out to attend to the emergency. So that would have a high consequence of failure. So after calculating the probability of failure and the consequence of failure, we multiplied those together to create an overall risk score for each culvert. And this plot shows all the culverts and their associated category. So the high criticality culverts that you can see in the red area had both a high consequence of failure and a high probability of failure. And then phase 7 was the life cycle cost analysis and funding strategy, which we'll discuss further in a bit. And phase 8 was the asset management program user manual, which is the report summarizing the program development, the findings from the fieldwork, and the risk-based asset prioritization recommendations from the program, as well as an implementation plan and communication plan. And these tools will be available online on the Alton Public Works website to be available to the public in the future. And then phase 9 is this wrap-up presentation to summarize the program. And I'll pass it off to Dan now.
Great, thank you, Emily. And thank you again for the opportunity to present this evening. So capital improvement recommendations. So we're recommending replacement of 6 culverts and the repair of 6 culverts that we found to be in poor condition or high criticality, which again, that the box in the top right, kind of that pink shaded box that Emily was showing a few slides ago. There's certainly, this is a living program, right? It's not a report that lives on a shelf. The town's going to continue to work on this and support the development. So doing further in-depth investigation on additional culverts determined to be highly critical. So the town helped look at 380 plus or minus culverts, and then the Ty and Bond bridge and culvert specialists came out to dive into a dozen or so of those higher risk culverts, but there are more higher risk culverts in that pink box, that high risk that should be looked into further. And we just encourage the town to continue mapping investigations of the remaining infrastructure. And then as they're doing a great job, as you're doing a great job of already, just continue to remove debris and sediment blockages and other ongoing maintenance, particularly for those higher risk or medium risk culverts. In terms of programmatic recommendations, working with Scott and his team on what we thought was reasonable, trying to target about 38 culverts per year on a 10-year rotating basis to go out and do a condition assessment, just to make sure you're staying on top of anything, especially in this part of the country. Freeze thaw, a lot of surprises can pop up each winter. So keeping an eye on things is important. As there's staff turnover, you're bringing on interns, things like that, just making sure they're trained and up to date on how to go out and do these types of condition assessments to look for issues and properly clean the culverts, or when they're doing cleanings, if there's a red flag that needs to be raised, make sure they kind of know what to be looking for. And a lot of these protocols and standards and what to look for are laid out in those documents that are deliverables as a part of this project. GIS, and I apologize if you don't know what that means. That stands for Geographical Information Systems. Those are the maps essentially that we created that are digital. You can pull those maps up on your phone. You can pull them up on a tablet, which the town has a couple of, and you can pull them up on the website. So just as new products are built, are constructed or rehabilitated, just making sure the mapping system is updated, and then just having a good record system for record keeping moving forward. Updating the asset prioritization as new data is collected, and then deciding, do we need to bring on another summer intern to help with data collection or doing improvements. When we get to the cost slide as well, maybe there's opportunity for some of the infrastructure improvements to be done in-house by town staff. So maybe bring on additional contractor support or subcontractors. And then considering an educational campaign. And one of those campaigns could be like the flyer that we've handed out to everybody here. This is a little brochure that just introduces a lot of the themes we're talking about tonight. What is asset management? What are some good best practices to look for with your stormwater infrastructure? What can we do to help the plan succeed? Picking up after your pets, washing your car safely and smartly, treating your yard like an asset. Just some good best practices, and I think this goes nicely with the representative that we heard from earlier with Winnipesaukee Lakes Association. Just it all
it all kind of goes together with the spirit of water quality improvement. And then it also lays out what the asset management plan was. So we can leave a bunch of flyers here for folks to just grab as they're coming into town hall. They're welcome to grab those. This will be up on the DPW website, but this can be kind of part of that educational outreach. Now, this slide, we don't want to scare you with numbers, but we, did want to highlight the fact through this slide that these projects do have a financial component. And these are the top 6 culverts that we were looking at, right? You can see there's a couple on the Swan Lake Trail, Old Wolfboro Road, Alton Mountain Road, Prospect Mountain Road, and Machado Hill Road.
What you do,
I'm sorry.
much ado.
Much ado, I'm sorry. Much Ado Road. And there's a design component that would go along with it. And what we're showing is construction costs if you were to do this, design it by an engineering firm and then put it out to bid by a contractor. We know Scott and his crew have a lot of in-house capabilities, so there could certainly be cost savings realized, but we wanted to paint a picture, worst case conservative scenario. This is what you'd be looking at if you were to put this out in terms of culvert capital improvement projects. There's also some maintenance and repair that needs to be done, but we figured that can all be done in-house within the current budget. So there's no dollar amount there, but there is certainly effort that needs to go in. That's the second bullet. And then the third bold area is, further investigation, which again, that 38 culverts every year, checking that out down near the bottom of the table, and then continuing to do the catch basin, drainage pipe, cleaning and inspections. Some additional recommendations could be a GIS on-call assistance contract, kind of a not to exceed contract with whether it be us or another Time Bond or another firm to help update the GIS as new work is done, whether it be for stormwater, even on the drinking water side, right? Just making sure the town mapping is updated. So if you want to go out, if you're doing dig safes, for example, or knowing what's going on, having access to the data at your fingertips could be beneficial. And then, continuing to do some asset prioritization could be another something else for the town to consider. So there's quite a bit here. And then we want to say, how do we pay for it? Those are large dollars. How do we pay for it? Right. There's a few different options, right? There are state and federal grants and loans out there. With our partners at TES, they were able to bring to light a number of stormwater related funding programs, which are listed on this table here. Other considerations could be increased annual operating budget. I'm not saying it's appropriate for Alton, but other communities do stormwater utility fee. So we've seen that done before. And additional funds may be needed to support these O&M activities and improvements. And again, the pictures we were painting on the previous slide were conservative, so there can be some efficiencies realized, but we just wanted to open everybody's eyes up to the possibility of what you could be looking at. So in terms of next steps, implement the 5-year action plan that we've kind of laid out here on the previous slides, addressing those high risk, high consequence of failure assets. Continue mapping and assessing the additional stormwater assets, getting a good workflow, for GIS. Maybe consider a stormwater utility fee, consider additional staff if necessary, and then just again keeping this as a living document where you're going to be updating the user manual and the overall program. And you don't have to tell U5 or anyone else, like you know what's out there. You've dealt with it. Here's some probably two familiar photos that this is kind of what happens to your stormwater infrastructure when it can't handle what's coming down the pipe or trying to come down the pipe. So this is what we're trying to avoid by doing these repair improvements, or maybe increasing the size and capacity of the hydraulic capacity of the
Especially
culverts.
after these last 2 years.
Right, you've
The
been
damage has
slammed.
it's been unbelievable,
right.
especially last July.
Right. It's
ironic, serendipitous, whatever adjective you want to use to describe it, it's pretty wild or
Mhm.
timely, I guess, that we are looking at this. So these culverts that we are looking at least can help say, hey, if we're going to do something, those 5 or 6 we were talking about would be a good place to maybe start and check out. And then there's
Great.
photos and there's backup in the reports, which we
Mhm.
can share with you all and check out. So you can actually see some of the photos of where Emily and the team and your field team and our experts found like, this is why there's a red flag, or this is why this is, high
And there's,
likelihood
and
of
there's a lot
failure.
more here that are critical other than those 6. And where are those
yeah.
areas?
Right. And those, the previous slide with all I mean, there was a lot.
There was
on
quite a
this
few on there.
This one right here.
Yeah,
I mean,
there was
there's
quite a few other ones on there.
there's a lot there. And we have them ranked. So in the report itself, you can see the order and the scoring
Mhm.
and kind of the recommendations for those. So we wanted to keep the numbers reasonable. I mean, that's a really large number if you
Mhm.
tackle everything in the high criticality. So this is a decision-making tool to help you make a decision. How can you make responsible decisions? You have to work within a certain budget. But think about, okay, if an asset is to fail, where can we not afford failure? Where can we get away with it? Right.
Right.
So looking at like these ones over here on the right side, really higher consequence of failure. Like I think those 6 are part of
Mhm.
this upper area.
Mhm.
These are still critical, but maybe maybe there's a way for fire to get around. Maybe it's a little bit longer route, but there's different parameters or metrics that we use in the spreadsheet to calculate these, and it's a very long spreadsheet with lots of inputs.
Because we do have quite a few drainage on Main Street as well as going down to Letter S Road.
Mhm.
So that are a concern.
If those were to fail, right, just what a headache that would be, right? It'll be 4th of July weekend, of course, and Memorial Day
Mhm.
weekend that is going to happen. So you have to try to be proactive, or that's the spirit of this. Try to stay ahead of it and address the hydraulic deficiencies or whatever that failure was. It could be in failure already. That's why some of these scored so high. Like there was deficiencies that we saw that need to be
This
addressed.
data is, that we're getting now is over 2 years? This has been the last 2 years, right?
Yeah, we did a lot of the field collection last summer. Yeah, summer
Last
2020.
summer, yep, right,
Summer
yeah.
23
I know you did a lot of,
into the fall. So
and you still currently doing more, that was it? You did your,
that
you
was
did your
it. Yeah.
data and that was,
our field
you're giving us
program
that
is
information.
complete. So it's a snapshot through
Mhm.
the fall. It's maybe September, October was maybe the last site visit.
August, October.
So applying for grants or anything like that, getting grants, that would be something the town would do ourselves.
We can certainly support you. We have, I personally help communities apply for grants. We have a number of other grant writers as well at Ty and Bond that help. So we can certainly help you put a grant application together.
Mhm.
And HDS is great to work with too. And Deb and her and Sarah's colleagues can help guide us on, just depending on what exactly the scope is, working with DES to determine what's an appropriate grant to try to pursue.
Okay.
And I guess, yeah, we would encourage you, maybe later this summer, if there's an intern or, if Amelia can peel off for a little bit, just to go through and check out some of those, those higher risk.
Oh, yeah.
Are these worse? Because we have all the photos are there. That's what's so
Mhm.
cool and great about GIS is you've captured data, you've captured photos, September 10th, 2023, this is what it looked like. So then Amelia can go out with the iPad or the tablet or her computer and just click on this culvert and say, what did this look like last year? Oh my gosh, this fracture, this fracture wasn't here before. This looks a lot worse. So that's what's really cool. Then take a bunch of photos and now you have a snapshot in time of
Yeah, that's
what's going
a
on.
great program.
It's really,
Yep.
really powerful tool
Yep.
rather than where did I save this on the network or where did I
Good
put those
tool.
pictures? Really, really great tool. Yep. And any cleaning exercise we're encouraging, through this and in the program, we say when this town's out cleaning those 38 culverts a year, doing the inspections, like just take a bunch of pictures while they're out there and just capture it. And now you have the data at your fingertips for that one culvert, that one structure. It's really, really nice to have. same thing, just side note, we're working on this right now for your water department as well. So
Right.
trying to get
Right,
data at your
capture, yeah.
fingertips and where are we right now?
Very good.
Tool.
The scattered chart, is that, it says culverts, but is that all drainage structures or are catch basins also captured in that chart?
The chart is
The-
just.
Identified
culverts.
386.
Yeah, that chart is just culverts.
Sorry, yeah, it's a little bit further up.
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of the field work was focused on the culverts. So that's one of the recommendations for the program is to try to, as feasible, like, further implement the program into other assets in the drainage system, the stormwater system, like catch basins, manholes. So some of those assets were mapped while the town staff was out mapping the culverts. But the focus of this program for the fieldwork and prioritization of the assets was focused on culverts, but further implementation for the program could be for doing the same thing for other types of structures in the stormwater system.
In critical areas like the COF, your consequence of failure for those would have failure of that drainage, closed drainage structure. That would all be pertinent, the same metrics and scoring. So it's more updating the y-axis here with the probability of failure for field observation.
A number of years back, the Lakes Region, that's the name of that group?
Planning Commission?
That's the place. So they've done apparently mapping of a lot of structures here in Alton. I think they noted 300 or something. Was that information also able to be rolled in and used and simplify your work, or?
We had, that group does not ring a bell personally, but the state did a lot of mapping out here and a lot of work on the state roadways. And there's a program that the SAIDS program did a lot of work in Alton. So we did not work with them, but the database, ultimately, we will share data with them and vice versa on what the state had. But that,
I know
that group,
Alton
though,
was one of the founding groups with that Lakes Region Planning Commission, but then for some reason left it. I don't know, I guess it was 6-8 years ago, something like that. So, but they've done a bunch of work in the interim, and
They did.
yeah.
can you jog my memory? If that's.
Yeah, so if I can just add a few things.
You want to come up and come up here and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Microphone.
How's this? Since it's movable. Dana Huff. So yes, when we were involved in this, we did work with those programs, but we didn't take their assessments and data into account here. We went out and assessed every culvert that they have. Another thing that we did was we came up with a catch basin and structure checklist so that when the DPW goes out and cleans their catch basins and structures, they have this list that they go through and they can add that to the same database. So it's all there. And the nice thing is that it's all mobile. You know, we bought 2 iPads as part of this program just for this purpose. So they take those with them and like Dan said, all that data is right there. They just have to click on that spot, boom, and everything that we know about it now and previously is there. It's all in there. Good.
Is that all instantly uploaded to the cloud, or is that something that has to come back to get a Wi-Fi connection, or is it cellular based?
Good
Or
question.
That's a good question. It depends where you are in this, you know, both ways. You can do it with data, or if the cellular, just like your phone, or if you're in a spot, you know, I'm going to have bad signal out here, just turn it off. And then you can work offline and it captures it all. And as soon as you pull into Dunks or wherever you are with Wi-Fi, then you can, it automatically uploads.
yeah,
It's
no,
gonna be real
the
time.
reason I was thinking that is, you know, working over manholes and structures and oops.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
all the data lost.
Pretty much.
Terrible.
Right, pretty much with the cellular on, yeah, essentially real time, which is nice too. So when, you know, Courtney was kind enough to allow Amelia to go out to spend time out with the staff, Emily could be back in the office and kind of tracking up, here they are, they just did 5 already. Let me check it out and see how the data looks and call them up and say, hey, you know, can you take another photo of this? Or what was this a mistake? You plugged in you know, this one's on fire. It's like, no, actually, yeah, it's pretty rough. So that quality control is a nice feature there too.
Are there, do you know if there are grants available just even to do the engineering portion of it? Or is that something you kind of got to spend the money on the engineering and then apply
Yes.
for the grant?
think she can answer that.
Deb Loiselle from New Hampshire DS again. You must have been reading my mind. So I was gonna mention that, I mean, it's pretty timely to have this conversation. Because you have a great document with some really good recommendations to move forward.
Yes.
And noting those 6 culverts that are in pretty high critical condition. So right now, we have a solicitation open for the Clean Water SRF State Revolving Fund Loan Program. It opened, I think, 2 weeks ago, and for the pre-apps, they are due May 31st. So for the engineering, you would qualify for a stormwater planning loan with up to $100,000 of principal forgiveness.
Mhm.
That's the maximum amount. And that would be 100% principally forgiven. And what is a planning loan covers assessments. So if you needed to do some further evaluation, that would be covered under planning. Preliminary design. So you can bring the design up to preliminary design. So if you wanted to look at some alternatives on one or more of those culvert projects, that would be a great project to propose. If you want to bring it to final design, then that would be an infrastructure loan. So, and that comes with a certain percentage of principal forgiveness. And we don't know what that is until the actual year when we evaluate all of the projects. Historically, it's been about 10 to 15%. The past couple of years, it's been a little bit more thanks to all of the bill funding that we've gotten. But we don't know right now until we rank all of the projects, and that will be done like June, July timeframe. It is competitive.
Okay.
We're having a workshop tomorrow to talk about the stormwater, wastewater, and some of our energy audit and other projects tomorrow afternoon from 1 to 3. I'll be speaking on the stormwater. Sarah will be speaking as well. So if it's something you'd like to sign up for, and it's not too late to sign up for it, it's on the DES webpage. And even if you can't attend, I would encourage one or more of you to actually sign up for it, because then you can have access to the PowerPoint presentation
Mhm.
and the recorded webinar as well. But we give some really good helpful hints on how to apply.
Okay.
And you might say, you know what, oh, that's really not enough time right now. That's the short time frame. I encourage folks who are looking at stormwater and non-point source projects, reach out to me and let's start brainstorming on what a project would look like. So I'd be happy to work with any of you, and I know Dan and Emily have offered as well. We could brainstorm a planning project or an infrastructure with a planning component project.
Do you have your information or card with you this evening?
I think I
For
might. If
contact.
not, I can certainly write it down.
Okay, thank you.
You're most welcome.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Deb. And yeah, no, that's perfect. And Sarah and Deb made sure that we were aware of that, that the Ty and Bond folks, Emily and I's colleagues are signed up to go. So between the 3 of us here, we can certainly, and Sarah, the 4 of us can point you in the right direction or help. And
Perfect.
that's a service. If I think the time frame is a little tight for the town to pull something together, you say, well, Ty and Bond, can you help? And then we say, of course, glad to help. So we can certainly pull things together in fairly short order. It's just for the pre-app, just I think getting that in is a good idea. And even if we're not successful the
absolutely.
first time around, then we have skin in the game. The next time around, we can, maybe get some feedback and just say, how can we improve this moving forward?
And you've done some training while you've been with us for the water department and for the public works director as well, a little bit of extra training, and so they know what to look for.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Which they
Amelia.
did a lot of research already, so I'm assuming that you did a lot of their training for them.
Correct. Yep. Between Emily and then the SAGE program and the applications that we've developed for the data collection is pretty straightforward. And the manual or some of the deliverables kind of just give a refresher on this. This is how to do it. But certainly they can
Perfect.
they can work with Emily and our team. It's pretty straightforward. So I think that would be a good
Mhm.
scope item
do some preliminary design on those, the top 6 there. Because you have to do preliminary design at some point. Why not get principal forgiveness? And then let's try to look at another, 10, 15 with like us, look at our bridge experts or culvert experts, take the deep dive and say, okay, how bad are these? What are we looking at? And what's the cost associated with these? And or preliminary design all 15 or 20, see what makes sense budget wise. And I guess we'd maybe talk to NHDS offline and say, does it make sense to go for the full 100,000, or might it be a little more competitive looking for 50,000, like principal forgiveness, and have those types of conversations offline to see how better to get some than none.
Some than none, exactly.
Yeah, try to keep the momentum going though. Be good.
You see, with other towns that you help with and work with, do you see that they put that in, some of the costs into their budgeting?
They are, yeah. Some of them have gone so far as setting up a stormwater utility fee. Others are, putting X percentage aside each year because they're real dollars there, not insignificant. So I've seen folks making that concerted effort to budget, a for the designing, but then also to implement and do the construction. And I think it'd be a good conversation with Scott and others in town too on the, once we do the preliminary design, like we'll have a more refined engineer's opinion of probable construction cost if it were to go out on the streets. But maybe once you see our preliminary designs, you could shop it around internally and say, hey, yeah, we can do this, or we can get the materials from X, Y, and Z. So I think that might be a good way to go about it. But yeah, folks other communities are certainly budgeting for it, to answer your question, putting the money aside each year.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay, great. No, we
Very
appreciate
good
it.
presentation.
Great, thank you.
And I think it's worked out fantastic. Yeah, and take all the information and we'll have to work with it.
Great.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to your resident, Dana Huff, as well, for his mentorship and leadership when he's wearing his tie and bond hat as our product director and championing this program, and now as a resident and stakeholder.
fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time and your efforts and everything, and including the town as well. Working with this system and when Ty and Bond, working with them, and I think it's all coming together. Now it's a matter of implementing a program to begin and start doing the necessary work.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for all your
Thank you very
great information and your hard work.
Appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
That's where Scott is in.
Yes.
And I would just throw out there, I know maybe Dana will be able to, or Dan at some point, to maybe share some additional information relative to the stormwater utility fee. We've been hit with a lot of residents relative to stormwater.
Yes.
Damage.
Yes.
We've constantly been inundated with residents coming in and talking about stormwater and how that is, magnified in the same time. That may be something in the future that you may want to be exploring along with the grant applications that way. So we can get some more information relative to that. Because
very helpful.
You probably now experiencing that. You are, I've already said to Courtney, I'm gonna have to go down and spend time with her now because she's always educating me about something with water.
I spent a lot of time with that.
So, we're learning. a lot
So it
about
all
that,
worked out well. Yeah.
Which is a benefit for you folks.
Yes.
Because it does come with a price tag.
Yeah.
You have to do the good work. If we don't, it's not worth it.
It's not worth it. It's not going to work. Yeah. Right.
Has Amelia been the go-to one for that? She's been doing most of the.
So Amelia spent most of her time doing it when she was with the water. I'm hoping she's gonna switch hats when it's time to do that. Very well.
Did very well.
That was the agreement that we had.
Yeah.
Previously, we would help one another. That's what we
Sure.
always had as far as that cross and the training that was afforded.
Mhm.
There from the Sage people and also from Nine and Bond and DES as far as pulling this all together. So we'd be able to have somebody internally that would be able to, help us maintain that GIS and data collection tool. So it's important to have that.
Do the guys down to DPW, does everybody know how to update it and everything? And like with the iPad, do they all know how to do it?
I don't think so.
That's a
No.
no over there.
No, I mean, we'd have to, I'd have to go to Amelia right now, for an example, and say, Amelia, and this is what we would do, and Dan and I have talked about this heavily a little bit, is that if you had a culvert and we, like we already have one culvert that's already failed up there, I believe it's actually one that's in that pink area.
Okay.
It's actually on Prospect Mountain Road. It failed during the winter. It's in total failure right now. And, when we go up there to replace that asset, then that will be documented within the GIS system. So we will document that, we'll do what current condition is now, because we need to do that under the culvert maintainer program. So we are certified, there's 4 of us at Public Works that are certified to be culvert maintainer. So we will replace that culvert, document all of that, add that into the database system. So then we'll have that. That'll then come out of the pink area, hopefully, and move right down to that bottom left hand.
Right,
So
right,
that's how
right.
that document is a working document.
Working document, and just to get it started, yeah.
Exactly. And then maybe once a year, say, okay, we've done all this great work, and then boom, there is like a manual process, like, okay, to move it from pink here, adjust the score, move it down. So that's, I think would be a good idea to say.
I know we
hey,
have
on
so
a
many,
couple hours, everything can update it, and boom, now here's the latest list and priority.
Right.
These are your top 10 now.
I know we have so many projects in town and everything. What's the feasibility of Public Works Department doing some of these culverts, and how many do you think we could do in-house?
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, I need to really sit with Dan and his people to review, what they had on those 6. But there's clearly, I feel that there's, we can actually manage some of those.
Mhm.
Swan Lake Road culvert, that's actually is a double culvert situation there. So under the culvert maintainer program, that would not be able to be covered under our
Okay,
certifications. It would have to be something. Yeah.
Too
it's a
big.
Double, we call it a double pipe. So double pipes are covered.
okay,
In that situation, so we would need to work with the consultants or an engineer to permit that and look at what will be the best application for that, so we don't have to incur in there. Very similar to what the state has to do when they look at their stuff as well. So overall, but a lot of them, as I mentioned to Dan,
Single
we have good talent and we have the ability with our equipment.
no question there.
To take care of some of these smaller ones. But once again, we will want to work that through the process to make sure that, we're not being short-sighted in some way, that we don't miss something that, the people that have the training and expertise have said, okay, that you probably need to make sure you upsize. Or if in fact it needs to be upsized a couple times, then we have to be careful with that, because under our certifications, we only have a certain parameter. So it may require some additional permitting, but we can still do the work.
Yeah.
So that.
But we have to determine the size and determine what needs to be permitted and go through the proper channels to be able to do the repairs. As far as once you actually get to the repairs on some of these, it's probably like, what's the time frame on some of these culverts that go into a couple of days, 3 days, a week?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these are, done in a day.
Mhm.
I mean, depending on what they are,
What-
what the size of them are,
right.
type of things, what the outfalls are. It all depends whether it's an active, waterway. There's a lot of different variables that go along with it. If things can be done in the dry, of course, then it makes things a lot easier.
Sure.
But there's certain best management practices that have to be followed under the certified culvert maintainer program and or any permitting from DES. So we have to make sure you follow those, which can, determine what the time cycles are. On that side. I think the big issue is that since we have this working document, live document, then is that we continue to use, some of our environmental, capital reserve funds and seed monies, to help, continue to keep this work going and keep our grants in working process. We've already been working on that with the DES 319 grant. Unfortunately, we've been unsuccessful in a couple of those attempts, for the Mill Pond, for an example. But we'll continue to move forward in those directions. And I think that, Ryan was involved when he set that capital reserve fund up, as you were, in utilizing those funds from that capital reserve fund for this type of a purpose of improving the environmental impacts across the board.
Well,
Very good.
well, and I think we can coordinate with DES as well, but
You might want to speak into the mic so we can.
Understanding the
everything's being recorded.
understanding the hydraulics is going to be important because as Scott was saying, it might not just be replace in kind. You might want to upsize and you want to think about future storm events, like you saw what happened last year. So what type of rain event do we want to be designing for? 5-year storm, 10-year storm, 100-year storm? How much water do we want to be able to pass through this? So a good planning exercise could be doing some hydraulic modeling to understand what is the volume under this different storm event to come through. And okay, if you replace in kind, it's this size, but the road's going to be overtopped or compromised under a 5-year storm event. But if you go up to a 10-foot box culvert, then you can handle the 50-year storm or the 100-year storm. So those are all decisions that I think we can make during the preliminary conceptual design. And those ones, that'd be like a prefabricated structure, 10-foot box culvert shows up on a flatbed, and you could do the site prep and then boom, just lower it down on top. But I think that could be a good next step planning exercise, looking at the hydraulics.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Yeah.
Quick
you're welcome.
question. How many 100-year storms did we have last year?
Oh.
All of them.
100 maybe, right? 100 in a year, I think, right?
Wow, good news. We shouldn't see another one for another 100 years.
Right.
At
Yeah,
least.
right.
The upside.
Theoretically.
I would say one other thing, and Emily pointed it out on one of her slides, and that is this whole program is driving towards being proactive versus reactive. So you control the situation and the cost, because you know how much things cost on July 4th when nobody's available and you gotta replace it right then and there on the spot. It's much more expensive than being proactive. So that's really the whole part.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For your time. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we'll move back to. We'll go back. You want to do the go back to the default budget now? Or
It's up to you. We can
week-
do the
what?
default last. if you
Okay,
want,
let's
just
go.
'cause everybody else-
Okay, let's go to solid waste department then. Recycling revolving account. Thank you very much again. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you for your time.
That's for the container, right?
Yes, that's for the containers.
Which one? Should be in the big.
This one.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump around a little bit.
Almost there.
If I can find it.
I know I'm doing shuffling.
Shuffling around. No, I don't know. if it is.
Right behind the one we're just on.
It was?
Should be.
Behind it.
Electrical installations.
I think it's in front of this slide. I was going to come in.
Oh,
It's just
before.
before,
I was
just
looking after.
before.
I see.
Here we go.
There we go. Yeah.
Okay, we found it. We're bouncing around a little bit tonight.
Yeah, I know. I do appreciate you moving these folks up in the agenda and on the presentation. I do appreciate administrator and Stacy for making concessions to get this on the agenda.
Yes.
We were on a different timeline and working with DES to get everything approved prior to submission to you folks, and
Mhm.
things got a little bit too tight, so.
Yeah,
Thank you
understandable.
for that.
I'm glad-
On this memo here, fairly straightforward, relative to Scotty's gone through and done an assessment up there of his containers that he has. All those containers up there are, as I mentioned in here, they're aged, they're 20+ years old. On that, one of them is clearly scrap. He'll end up just busting that up and sending it to scrap. There's a second one up there that potentially would be close to scrap, but may be able to be utilized for a little bit longer in there. And the reason why we're looking to increase the number of containers is that we're going to be looking at increasing some of our recycling as well. And I mentioned in here in regards to our styrofoam recycling program that we're going to go ahead and work with the Rotary Department, Rotary
Rotary.
on in regards to collection of styrofoam, and then working with Guilford to give that to them to then go ahead and recycle through their styrofoam recycling program over there.
Sure.
The rec department is also working with solid waste as well in regards to collection of plastic film. Takes quite a bit of it, but basically they have a program now that you can recycle this plastic film, and eventually, once you get up to a certain amount in weight, they'll actually provide you one of these benches that is actually made out of recycled plastic material. So it's one of the life benches, I guess, in some ways. But once again, you get a return for what you recycle there. It's a collection container, and it's given to a company that then recycles it. There is, it's done in the city areas, it's done quite heavily.
Quite often.
That way, that have large volumes of people that come in. So basically, these containers, he's gone through and collected 3 quotes. He is recommending utilizing the local company here, which is a couple $100 more to purchase the containers. He has gone and looked at those containers as well, feels that they're a good fit for what he needs up there. These would come from the recycling revolving account because these are used for housing those recyclables. So it's feels that it fits under the criteria as well.
These are 40 footers.
Yes.
They're 40 footers, high side,
High cube, yeah.
high cube. About how many ton does that hold? Or should I say how many yards?
Yeah, so how he figures everything with that is the ability for like his cardboard bales and his aluminum bales. So with a high cube, he can actually double stack, so he can get a full load. So they come with a 53-foot trailer and put in, his recyclables there, whether it be for the aluminum and or the cardboard. They have a funky way that they load those 53 footers, but basically if he takes a 40-foot high cube and he double stacks them, that basically gets him a load for a 53-foot trailer for weight and everything and size, the way that they put them in the trailer. So the high cubes are the
way to go.
the way to go
You'd have to
for
get 2 of
those.
them compared to that.
Right. And he and I looked at maybe a couple alternatives. One was taking like two containers and then putting like truss roofing over them and spanning them, and we would have to pave the area. So based upon cost, this appears that it's definitely the lower cost, and we still meet the need for our space and collection that way. So I think it's a good move.
I think it's needed at this time. It's definitely needed.
Yeah, I mean, things are going well up
Mhm.
there. The new building's working well. Still fine tuning as to the functionality there. We got the doors all in there. We're just waiting on a third quote for our gutters, which they were up there the other day. Another company came in.
Oh, good.
Quality Insulation, the town administrator
Mhm.
was able to connect with one of their people there and got somebody up there to get us a third price on that, so we can compare it, since we had one that was extremely high and one that was low.
Was low.
So this one here will be able to help judge moving forward.
Much better and probably a little bit better explanation on them. One of them looked like it was done on a piece of cardboard.
Yeah, and that's the cheapest one.
Yeah.
Very reputable company, does a
Yeah.
lot of work around the lake.
Yeah.
That way, and to be honest with you, for that short of money, I'm hoping that he does write it out on that way.
Yeah,
When you get something that's typed up like this, or in one of these quotes,
right.
that money, that is all factored into these quotes that you get. You know, if you have somebody that works in the office and they prepare these things, you gotta cover that cost.
I've been in business for over 30 years.
You've probably
and
done a lot
it
of
makes-
handwritten estimates.
It makes perfect sense to have a good estimate that explains everything, what you're gonna do, what the material is, how you're doing it, what it costs, and not just on written. I've seen guys write them on napkins.
Yeah.
So, any other questions? Okay, I make a motion then to authorize Public Works Director to purchase of 3 high cube 40-foot storage containers for solid waste transfer station for housing recyclables for the purchase price of actually of $13,485. The cost coming from the recycling revolving account.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Waterworks emergency request.
Come on up. Just to preface this, if you remember, I had mentioned that, we had an emergency
Yes,
situation,
yes.
with the communication line, the hard line between the pump stations and the tank. We were trying to work that out and get things moving. Was able to, catch up with a few of the board members face to face, as they came in for the recount. Given the situation, but we're here to discuss it tonight, and our consultant here has, gladly
It's all yours, Courtney.
Sorry, I came
joined
late.
us.
I didn't realize that the stormwater thing was going on, and I felt since I was part of it, I should probably at least be here, so. So basically what's going on is how the communications work for the town of Alton, is you have the 2 pump stations in the tank. Basically, they talk to each other all day long. When the tank needs to get filled, it tells a well to turn on. When it's at its capacity, it shuts off. So, for the past probably 6 months, whenever we have a car accident or some sort of situation with the power lines and the power going out, we lose communications. And that is because the line that comes from the tank to the pump stations is an old TDS telephone line. It has not been upgraded to fiber. It's old copper. We don't know why it exists, if we pay for it. We don't know if TDS knows we have it. Just in the past, the old employees, we used to call up, they'd run out, they'd fix it, we'd get up and running. Sometimes a squirrel would chew through something and they'd find it and get us up and running. But basically with that being out of commission, this last snowstorm, TDS will not fix it. One, because the old employees have gone and left and they don't know how to work on it. So that leaves us with a sticky situation, and that situation is the 20 to 32 hours worth of overtime we're getting every week because my guys have to come in and turn the well on and shut the well off every time it's called to run.
Been doing that for how long?
They have been doing it since, I want to say, so we're at 63% of our overtime right now as of March end. And we have 3,500 left. So just this week, we had 40 hours of overtime between the two, then 21 and then 16 through the weeks. So obviously I'm coming to you because this needs to be fixed. I've only got 2 guys, they're on call and they're right out straight. So when they're out doing that, they can't be responding to other things. And when they're home, they're actually watching the tank. Do I have to head from Laconia? How long is it going to take me to get in here? How much time do I have to turn the well on? It just, the whole situation is unfortunate. It's archaic.
Yeah.
I guess we always assumed it was going to be fine until we did the tank replacement, but it kind of came horse before the cart. So basically what we have is, all pump stations now are going to SCADA systems, and it's supervisory control and data acquisition. We have none of that. This would be the first step, basically going from that telephone line to cell phone. We're gonna go to AT&T because Verizon is very spotty in that area. And that requires, EII, which is our SCADA, I guess, on-call and SCADA system company. They're the only ones, they're out of Molten Borough. They're the only ones in the area. They own our program. So they're the ones to go to. Has provided us a quote of $45,500 to kind of update this to a cellular unit. And this will go like if we get a new tank, this will work with the new tank.
So I asked that.
You know, it's unfortunate that we're doing it backwards. Could we do a better system in the future with a new tank? Probably. But the thing we're dealing with is the tank is so high and we have so much vegetation and trees and everything else, and the pump stations are so low that we don't have a lot of option to begin with. They went up with a bucket truck shooting elevations and had a hard time with communications. This was way back when I was in Meredith. So we've been trying to get this implemented. It just happened to be that, you know, life happened before we were able to get a system set up. So we're looking at a couple months between them building the panel, getting installed and everything else, but the vendor is, they're aware of our situation and they're working very diligently to try to get it at least up running temporarily. There's things that they can
There's
do.
something they can do.
Yeah,
get
to
it
at least relieve the guys. You know, they're gonna get burnt out. We're turning summer lines on soon. We're doing hydrant flushing. There's only
Gotta be
two
done
guys.
now.
So it needs to be done. So that's kind of, obviously there's a cell phone plan. We've already reached out to Josh to discuss with our cellular provider to start working on that and getting them all our stuff to AT&T. So we're paying just one bill. But that's kind of the long and short of it. I can answer any questions.
Does this
but-
45.5 include the temporary service?
Yes, yeah.
Does it come out and
Yep.
where are you planning to pull this from?
So the initial plan was, obviously I didn't have my computer with me, so I gave the wrong line item, but, the water main,
Water main capital reserve.
Water main capital reserve.
There's currently 251,000 in there.
What was it, 200?
251,000, yeah.
Okay.
Will you be able to monitor it from your phone?
So we can already do that.
Yeah.
That's already set up at the tank. Sometimes when we have an event like the power outage, we do lose that communication. So the only way to verify the level. So last week, the overtime was higher because of the fact that they had to go up and open the hatch and say, oh, we got water. Oh, we don't have water, you know? So we went right back to the Stone Age. That's not always how it works. That has already been upgraded, so we can see every 15 minutes. All of us can see the tank for every 15-minute increments. We can go back for years and download that to an Excel spreadsheet. So when that equation is in there, it works out great. So we can at least say, okay, what the tank's at 116 inches, we need to start making our way so we don't go too low and get the well started.
And you said that even with this new system, even when we do decide to replace the tank.
Yep.
We'll still be able to use this system.
Yep.
So that won't interfere with that. This will already be done.
Yeah, it's just like the wells and the VFDs, like everything was, came to failure before we were ready to, you know, execute the next task. So we kind of did that one first, but everything is, capable to be upgraded with
Okay.
any essential upgrades that we have to do.
Okay.
So.
And this was the, obviously, I mean, you only got one quote.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
that's
mean,
only
they
part
already,
of it.
by the time we reinvented the wheel and they got the, went into the program, got the program, and then made their stuff work with it, they already have it. So it's kind of like an IT thing where, you know, they have the controls already built in their program.
Everybody else
We'd have to go.
We'd have to
Okay,
reinvent the
okay,
wheel,
yeah,
basically, you know what I mean?
So this is the
So
company
it's-
we started with kind of, so we got to.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Makes sense. Yeah. Any other questions?
I make a motion that we raise and approve.
as part of your motion.
Yeah.
If the board is agreeable to it, is to verbalize waiving the bid policy.
Right,
The 30,
right.
given
That's why I
given the
asked.
circumstances involved.
I make a motion that we waive the three bid process and we appropriate the sum of $45,500 coming from the Water Main Capital Reserve Fund to update and repair the lines. How should I just, the communication lines from
High-speed
the,
internet.
and high-speed internet from the tank to the two pump houses. Second.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The boys will appreciate that.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, Courtney, did we approved it tonight? How long would you say it would take a month for them to, how long till the guys can stop going out every?
Well, you're gonna get it temporary, so they can come out.
So right now, they're monitoring the tank from home. But the panel does need to be made. So that could take a month. It's just the nature of, what, you're getting parts from everywhere. There's
Even putting the temporary.
not the temporary. The temporary, I
Yeah.
was told that 2-3 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I
Yeah,
mean,
the
it-
sooner the better they get out.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
really, we're at the mercy of how quick things can come in and they can get it executed, but I mean, the process has started, so it's
Sounds
better
good.
than waiting weeks and then starting that and
Yeah.
being into summer, so.
Thank you very much.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Stockbridge Corner Road. Stockbridge Corner, Valley Road intersection update.
So, Mr. Chairman, this will be real quick. After we had that discussion, last meeting, then there was a discussion about when the stop sign, how long it's been up, what we've had for incidents, and prior to that, there's an updated email that was on the table. So the stop sign, after the board made the decision, was installed on 7/12, so July 12th of 23. So to date of this email originally, which was March 27th, the lieutenant checked the stats for me. And we have confirmed that there has been 0 incidents
Yeah.
since July of 23, when the stop signs were put into the intersection. And going out 5 years prior, there's been a total of 6 accidents at that intersection for a 5-year time frame. I do know that I had originally, when we had this discussion, pulled a 10-year time frame, and those stats were closer to 11.
Okay.
But confirming, we went out 5
Right.
years, just to confirm, or show, the reason we were talking about it in the first place was because of those crashes. Because we were getting emails with photos of the damage and the debris in the road and the guardrail being hit and things.
So far with the decision that we have made and to make those corrections has worked.
Yes. There hasn't been anything, so. And really the reason it was on the agenda was to provide that
Yep.
update.
No, I appreciate it very much. Thank you
Yep.
for sharing that report. Okay, we're gonna go back to the default budget discussion.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you for pushing that to last, just so we could
Yes.
get everybody else
You're
out of
welcome.
there.
Yes, I couldn't see everybody sitting all night long.
So I have some documents. There was the default budget for the operating budget was in your binder. But I did have some additional documents that we were working on over the last couple days after the storm. Myself and the finance department. So on the table, you'll see, first of all, there's a spreadsheet, looks like this. And this is the main document that we were spending a lot of time. I know this document doesn't look like much, but to get to these numbers was what took a little while, because we took every single employee and made all of the payroll changes and adjustments to see by department where we would be. So if you look at the right-hand column, you have the budgeted wages, and just explaining this, when we say budgeted wages, so in 2023, that was the wage amount for full-time and part-time employees. Now, mind you, this year was a little bit different than any kind of standard year because we did a mid-year pay increase with the 10%. So that 10% was not budgeted in 23. It was in the proposed budget for 24, but because we went to default, that means that we're originally starting with wages that were approved before the 10%. So even without giving any merit or COLA increases to employees in 2024, none whatsoever, we still have to cover that mid-year in between. So what you're seeing on the numbers on the right-hand column is for each budget or each department. The ones in parentheses is the difference. That's what we need to cover. So if you go all the way down, so basically we're looking at in a total of, the default budget being a little over 9.5 million, $344,722 is the number that we need to cover as far as the difference. And that is just wages. I don't want any misconception for the board or the public that these are projects or money that we're trying to cover for new proposals. This is just strictly wage increases, and that's all we're going to focus on. When I say focus on, meaning we're not taking on any new projects.
No.
But we're maintaining everything else that we're doing, but we're focusing on making sure, obviously, that the efforts that we made to retain and hire employees that stand, we're not going any further. And we're not going to take on any new projects, but we're going to maintain and tote the line. And that's the intention moving forward. So with that, starting out with that, just to give you an idea of where we are covering those wages. And just to make it kind of clear for the people that might be watching this meeting either live or later on, that again, stressing the fact that when we went to default, even though it normally covers the wages that we were last year, it didn't have that mid-year increase in there.
Right.
So
10%.
that's why it's a little bit unique in that sense.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So the wages that are listed here, or the delta, the 344, does that encompass the increased costs for all of the ancillary? I mean, is this straight salary cost, or does this also include, healthcare and FICA and all the other fun taxes that come with it?
These are the wage increases, but the other stuff that come along with it are out of the benefits budget. And that is not, those had to be adjusted for by law. So we're not, so yes, with this number, we are able to cover all of the ancillary costs as well.
Okay, so yeah, so that makes sense. So when I go through the more detailed breakdowns that you have, they have some there that's like, gotta do it. That's why.
Yes.
All right, I understand.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Nope, absolutely. So as we go in, and again, I just want to point out for the board and the public, that, on the table, you'll see there are some, responses that I got from department heads on the bigger ones, with suggestions on where they will, focus on pulling, money from other lines to cover the wages, the wage deficit in their budget. Not to mention, we are going to, the bigger budgets are going to have to cover some of the smaller departments because, let's face it, the clerk's office or building or planning don't have that kind of room. They're going to do the best they can to save $500 to $1,000 on different lines by, pulling tight on any spending, office supplies, ancillary costs. But they don't have the ability to cover $20,000, $30,000. Their budget as a whole is only 150. So when we start looking, unfortunately, we're going to be looking at police, fire, and DPW pretty hard as far as the numbers go. So that's why you don't see necessarily a department head email from, Jen down at the clerk's office.
Right.
We did talk. And she's gonna try and, like I said, $550 to $1,000 out of the clerk's line, but.
These
is a
departments
pretty
that we're
tight
going to be
cut.
looking at are going to be taking care of the offset
Right.
as much as possible.
And then the other ones, the bigger ones, like I said, there are gonna be some costs, savings in the administration lines. that we will be able to look at, and I will explain that going through. And again, this is a lot of information, so my point tonight was to give you an overview, give you this information so that you can look at it,
Yep.
digest it. And this is gonna be a conversation we're gonna be having all year. I hate to say it, but
Yeah.
you guys are gonna want updates, you're gonna
Of
wanna
course.
know where the budget is. So this is just a start to that conversation, and we're gonna look at these lines as we go and keep an eye on it. I will say, I'm pleased to report today, as of today, we're 3 months into the year. We've now discovered we've gone to default, and we still are ahead of the game in the overall percentage right now. So for the first 3 months of the year, we've expended out of the operating budget, and I will say the number's almost exactly the same out of the water department's budget, is that the percentage for the 3 months, we're still at 74.79%. So we're about 0.25% ahead of where we normally would be by the percentage of decrease each month. And water department's almost exactly toe for toe with the operating budget. I think it's 74.9, something along those lines. So
Okay.
the budgets are all both in good shape right now. We're not starting out having this discussion behind.
Yeah.
We're doing all right. So
Okay.
just starting to go through and looking at it. If you want, the water department's right on top. That one will be a lot quicker discussion. Because we're dealing with the water department, like, you know, that they're their own enterprise fund.
Right.
So they're not gonna be, it's not money that we can't take from their budget to offset the other operating budgets, and vice versa. We can't help them either. They stay separate in their own. If you look, the default budget is exactly the same as the 2023 budget. There was absolutely no change to that. And really what the saving grace is right now with the water department is you have, right now, for the first
3 months.
2 or 3 months of the year,
Mhm.
we didn't have one employee because Amelia had transferred lateral to highway. The superintendent's position, is being held, as a consultant role right now, which is saving money, and, those two big, there's no, well, there was one third thing, what was I missing? Oh, Penny, yes, right now, we also have the retirement of the admin, which we will have to hire, but
Right.
there's going to be some gaps in there. And what happens with that is when the savings alone in the wages will offset and cover, what we need to cover out of the water department. For their deficit. But the other thing that comes along with that is for every gap we have with an employee cost, there's savings with the New Hampshire retirement system, with FICA, and the other benefits that go along with that. So every time we realize savings in the operating budget, the benefits lines all have a savings as well. It's hard to calculate because we don't know exactly how many payroll periods will be without, but every time we're open a position, or even whether it's part-time or full-time, there's some accruing benefits that are also going to realize savings as well. So water department, that's really where, the big savings are, in order to cover the wage
cover the-
increases and things that we need to moving forward with that. Any specific questions about water, before we move on to the operating
Yeah,
budget?
it just doesn't defer any of the offset. They're the same on both.
They're exactly the same. Yeah, there was no change
So
to
there was
that
no change.
from 23. Yeah.
Okay.
So going into the operating budget, grab too many pieces of paper. I'm trying to get organized.
I'm doing the same thing over here.
Okay. So starting out, when you start looking at, the administration, the budget, moving forward there, one of the big realizations is line 15 there's a part-time line.
Mhm.
We no longer have that position right now. It's not filled, and we're going to freeze that to retain that $20,000 in that part-time line.
Did you say part-time?
Part-time line.
15.
15. Right here, line
there it is.
15.
Got it.
Line 15, part-time wages, which was $20,000.
Mhm. And then there's gonna be some savings in meetings and conferences, because we're just gonna obviously hold off on some of those as well. What's it? Oh. General expense.
General expense.
And then, unanticipated expenses.
Okay.
Budget committee is not really going to have,
Was that it for the
Yeah.
administration?
yeah,
Those two? Or was there
there's
three?
three.
What was I missed one of them.
Yes, for.
General
There's four.
There's four, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you had the, going back to line 15,
Mm-hmm.
which is the 20,000. What was the second one?
Meeting and conferences,
Yeah.
Meetings and conferences.
general expenses,
110,
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
line
139,
139.
139,
and then the last one.
139. I've got that one.
And then $8.99.
And then the 899. Okay, thank you.
So budget committee doesn't have really anything that it needs to absorb. They're just gonna have to operate off of what they have.
What they have, okay.
Yeah. There's, and then, like I said, town tax collector. She's gonna try and retain the 550 that's in 137. That's records management.
Mm-hmm.
She thinks she can hold off on that until the
Okay.
beginning of next year.
Okay,
Going into elections and registrations, there's nothing there. Then the default, those are all election required laws.
so yeah,
So that's,
that has to
yeah,
stay.
yeah, we can't be taking anything from elections.
No,
That could cause some problems.
oh yeah,
One or two.
Yeah,
to say the least.
yeah. IT department, it's gonna be looking at, Josh's gonna be looking at 139 as general expense. It's also going to be looking at 519, which is security. Some of the reasons, and I don't want you to think that we're gonna compromise security or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But if you recall, he did get an approval on a special warrant article to replace all of our servers. And also last year, one of our end of the year purchases, because our time came up on support, is we put an entirely new firewall in the very last part of this year, of last year. So with those new components and the new servers, we should be able to realize some savings out of security.
Sure.
I just want to stress the fact that we weren't gonna forgo
Right,
cybersecurity
okay.
or anything like that.
So will there still be some expense under that line item, or are you saying?
Yes, I mean, he's gonna have some ancillary costs going into that, but that's one of the areas where he's gonna be able to offset
To offset.
the wage line. And in IT, we're only talking about one employee, so
Yeah.
Mhm.
the differences. And again, that's a good point though, Drew. I want to just make sure that, some of these lines we're looking at, like I said, that part-time position that we're not gonna hire out, obviously, we're gonna realize the savings of that entire line. Some of these other ones, and you'll see the proposals from the larger departments, they're proposing savings of a partial out of some lines because of some overages. They're not planning on running the whole line out. Unless it's
They're gonna
something.
need a
Yes,
portion of it, but
right,
I mean, is there, like this one is there for $3,000, well, a portion of that will still have to be used.
right. So, and like I said, with IT, the same, if you look at the spreadsheet, I think it's only. Where'd I go with my spreadsheet? Yeah. with it-
7,748.
Yeah. So 7,748, I mean, you look at savings at general expense, even if it does $2,000 versus the
Mhm.
three.
Right.
And then instead of the 13,600, he sees, $7,000 out of that, and half of it, it makes up that difference.
What was your other line item down here?
519.
519, okay.
Then we go into legal. So one of the areas that we usually.
Yeah.
Oh,
You got it.
So legal. Is line 166. We always keep a contingency for attorneys' litigation fees. What that is that's not our retainers, that's not our regular, that's for actual litigation. So, you know, it's not a guarantee that nothing will happen, and I'm not saying that we're gonna realize all 60 grand of that. But traditionally, you know, that's a safety net for us. Barring any catastrophic legal events, we usually realize a savings of, you know, between $25,000 and $30,000 out of litigation. And right now, we don't have anything pending that would make me feel like we're gonna use 60 grand worth of
Right, right.
litigation.
So it's very feasible that could only half of that, if anything.
Yes.
Could be used.
Yeah.
That's a good safety net at the end of the year, last month, like if we get a full.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Hang on to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then benefits, and again, I'm gonna point these out to you, but I can't tell you exactly the dollar amount until we know how many days or pay periods we are without an employee or position.
FIC.
But looking at this, for instance, you got health and dental. You know, for any open positions, we automatically benefit our budget for a family plan. Well, we have a lot of those that go to a single plan, and the difference between a family plan and a single plan, you're probably talking $17,000 in just one plan. So any of those positions that we don't have filled or whatnot, or we're gonna hold off on for any period, we don't have to pay the premium for that duration. Same thing when you start looking at obviously Medicare and FICA, you know, when you're not paying somebody that it's budgeted for, you're not paying out those wages.
Right.
But the other big savings is when you start getting into police and, well, you see that all the retirement system, the New Hampshire retirement system there is broken down to police, fire, and employee. Employee is group one. That's all of their, you know, town hall employees and things like that. They're a lower percentage. When you get into the police and fire, the employer contribution is much higher of a percentage. And I don't have the exact percentage off the top of my head, but I believe fire is up to 33% now. I think it is 33, 30. It just jumped up. Fire is up higher. Fire realized an increase more than police did this year. The last time the jump was in law enforcement. But there's a significant amount of money because we realized that when we were calculating those pay increases last year. I think I told you when we were talking in it, the retirement system was almost as much as the pay increases were when you started looking at what it was going to cost us to do that. So the savings is significant in the benefits area. Unfortunately, I can't give you an exact dollar amount. I mean, it's gonna vary, it's gonna
take time.
change as each month, but these are things we're gonna, Laura and I were talking about specifically as well, watching closely. Especially when you start getting into health and medical, those are big lines. I mean, you're talking about $1.3 million. And even when you get into the retirement systems, you're talking 350 to 375,000. Going into looking at planning, planning is going to do the best they can with incidental expenses like, you know, printing costs and reference materials, things like that. Postage, they're usually a little bit left in that, but of course they have their notices that have to go out and there's no question about that. So I didn't identify a specific line in planning. But Jessica and obviously all the department heads, even with the smaller budgets, are going to do the best they can to, you know, scrape up $1,000 or two if they can.
Which is something they're still working on.
Yes.
I imagine now.
In the building department, again, there's not a lot. But what they have to come up with is a lot smaller than when you're looking at some of the other budgets. Yeah, they're only at $3,000 is what they're looking to absorb. One of them is the benefit buyout. So you'll notice that that's another thing to point out. So every single budget has a benefit buyout, and those benefit buyouts are an average. of what is left on employee benefits that they end up buying out at the end of the year or selling back. That's another area where all the department heads are aware and they've passed the word to their employees to do the best they can to utilize time and to, obviously we can't force it if it can't happen. But that is an area, because we usually set a average amount for all the departments when they go. I mean, you got 2 employees in building and they have $2,864. So if those 2 employees utilize most of their time, and we do have a new building inspector, so the accrued time isn't as much as, say, John with 13 years or 14 years with the town. There's some savings in that area. And for every other budget, there's also, usually some savings in that area. Assessing doesn't really have anything, when you look down through there. The largest line they have aside from payroll is their contracted services, but we're still under the contracted services with Whitley, so. But assessing is a small, well, 16 grand, but we'll have to cover that, through some of the admin lines, just because they're not gonna have a lot to play with.
There isn't much.
Mm-hmm. Now we're gonna get into grounds and maintenance, the meat and potatoes where we can take all the money. No, I'm just kidding. I will say that, going through grounds and maintenance, there is no wages in there. So all the wages for public works are in the highway department. So if you look at all these other budgets, it all comes out of, highway. But one of the things I want to point out, for these budgets, for grounds and maintenance, one of the things that happened in 2023, where is a large savings and a lot of the departments didn't necessarily see that or reflect that. But if you remember in 2023, we got noticed from the co-op and Eversource that there was going to be this huge spike in fees for the electric company. So if you go through almost all the building electrics, we ended up going to default at the 23 rate, but the proposed amounts for all of 24 were lower. I give you an example. Just the town hall electric went up. I should say the increase that we had originally had to budget for that didn't quite occur was almost 10 grand more. Fire department, if you look at it, fire department, the fire chief did notice that through all the fire stations. He's actually going to realize a savings of $8,000 in his electrical alone under 303. That's on these memos. If you see the memos that
Yes,
paper
yeah.
clipped together.
Yep.
Those have line numbers on them and stuff, but
Okay.
yeah. But I did want to point that out because that was actually a discussion I had quite a bit with the board and with the budget committee this year. Is that electrical, they wanted to know why all the electrical bills were going down a little bit, but it was because the estimated price increase was, I think, was stated to be higher than it really was when it came out. And like I said, I can't, that's not one of those things I can give you exact dollar amount as to what the savings is, other than what the difference was based on the average usage last year. So this year, we will monitor that as we go and watch, where it's just that, we're gonna realize some savings there. I just can't give you a dollar, to the penny. But these are areas that are promising for us, to be able to cover that.
Sorry, I was just jumping.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. So most of the, if you look at, those attached memos too. There's one from the Public Works Director in there. That actually talks about, again, he's talking about the wages. In that memo. He's got two options, in that the top one, as far as covering it. Was if we were going to include the 4% merit that was projected for this year on the top line. But we're not going to be able to move forward with anything like that. We're just gonna stay with covering the 10%.
The 10% and the 4% merit is not gonna.
No, it's just gonna be, we're just covering what was already granted to the employees last year. So that puts him roughly at that 85,000, 384 mark. And he's got 3 lines down here with brief explanations as to where he can stave to. And again, that first one is some seasonal part-time employees that aren't employed right now. That's 70,346. Anything that has to do with staff like that, there's also going to be a savings realized in the benefit side of things too, that will be more than that.
Okay. And overtime, all divisions, mild winter, the savings estimated.
Yep, so going into the beginning of this year, obviously, we had a mild winter, barring last week.
Yeah. Exactly.
We're still in good shape with that, and going in, we only have to cover the early part of the winter months before we go into 25's budget. So, we're looking at, between the decent months we had leading up to this last storm, and then
Last 2 storms.
what we usually, customary catch for those 2 months going into Christmas, as long as we don't get blasted in November, December, which traditionally hasn't happened in the last 5 years. I
You
don't
never
think.
know.
Yeah, so,
You never know.
but I know when. Oh,
So
sorry.
I'm just gonna add to that.
Sure.
Even though the last couple of weeks have been a little bit rough with these spring storms that we had, but ultimately, met with Jack actually yesterday, and, we've had only 20 weather events for the 23-24 season. And the budget was created on basically 30 weather events. So, and that's how we compute salt, that's how we compute, all those, estimate the overtime and stuff. So really, in these budgets, I mean, the big nugget that's gonna save, potentially be able to do a large portion of your offset is actually out of the public works budget. And it's usually snow and ice, as long as we don't get hit.
Right.
As long as it doesn't snow in October, this will help. I just can't give you a number. Paul would be able to make some better projections, in regards to that, but just to understand that, it can be, in the past years, depending on how things have gone, historically, if you go back and look, I think the Public Works Department or Highway Department has returned $100,000+ a year, depending on how the winter is. So we always leave the winter projected on the, kind of the worst case scenario.
Sure. Sure.
So that hopefully will be able to help you, as to cover these costs. There, and once again, we're trying to control overtime, reason why we, kind of deferred some of our operations to just being more focused. Like this past week, it's been, dealing with the storm and stuff in the roads and not.
Fortunately, it's not hanging around a long time to have to deal with it.
No,
It snow's going fast.
Real, a good 8-10 inches of it is gone today. If I blink an eye.
Oh, yeah.
Disappeared.
No, it's understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's understandable.
Thank you for the clarification. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, no, there's a little, and also he has a little bit, the DPW has a little bit more flexibility when you're talking, their main operations are infrastructure and roadway, and they do have, even though they have their operating budget and everything else, but they also were successful with their road reconstruction budget. So a lot of the road reconstruction, will all be pulled out of that warrant article. Thank God that went through. That would have made things really rough.
Well, yeah, yeah, say the least.
Yes.
Okay, so we're
That's
still,
covering Public Works, so after Public Works is all up, we get through Cemetery Department. There's no wages to cover in Cemetery Department, like I said, everything under the DPW umbrella is all in the lines under, DPW highway.
Yep.
So moving forward, you get into
Insurance.
the insurances.
Mhm.
There's not really a lot, there's a little bit of savings that we see in there over the year. But it's not really a lot because most of those costs are fixed based on percentage
that's right.
increases from, well, Primex will set the, we get those, price increase notices from Primex at the beginning of the year and they
Mhm.
don't, insurance companies don't really give you a refund.
No, they don't.
So, so we're not counting on a lot of savings there. There usually is a little bit, but that's just if we don't have a lot of claims going in or anything like that, but. Police department's the next big budget. Todd did put together a spreadsheet. Where he identified the very last one on the table. He had put together a, spreadsheet with a list of,
Things you can offset.
yeah, offset and also his explanation as to why. If you remember, it's a sort of a blessing and a curse this year because we're in the default, but Todd did fill all 4 of his open positions moving into the new year. So you'll see that there's a little bit of savings that he's looking to realize in part-time and overtime because he's not gonna have to use so many coverage hours because he's not shorthanded anymore. So, and not to mention, they had also hired a new employee, so they went up to 13 full-timers last year.
So he's looking at almost $40,000
Mm-hmm,
offset.
yeah. And of course, there are some other areas that, that he's thinking he might actually be able to do more. This is a conservative number. Him and I spoke, yesterday afternoon. And, he was up in my office for a little while and we talked and, obviously he's being conservative with what he's showing for numbers, but he did say that, fuel costs have gone down a little bit since 23. 30,000 is realistic. He thinks that depending on, how things go with the operation, that he could probably more of a savings there with that. Electricity possibly might be a little bit more, than the average. And he's gonna do what he can. His overtime budget's about 80 grand. He's definitely thinking that he can save 10, but depending on the amount of, major incidents we have and investigations, he might be able to pull a little more from that as well.
Okay.
From there, it's going into the fire department. So the fire department, the chief did send me an email, with some areas that he's identified. So these lines. He's identified these lines that he believes that he'll be able to, offset to help with their deficit. The other thing that's not listed on here that the board has the option to, and the chief and I sat down and talked about it at length too, so he knew that that option was there. Is that the, some of the overtime and shift coverage can be covered, under the ambulance revolving account too. So that can be shifted. Some of that can be shifted, because they were supposed to, in the 24 proposed budget, they had 2 more full timers they were counting on to cover some of the shifts. Now they're not gonna have that. So, the chief is working things out right now and reducing overtime quite significantly right now, but they've already gone through a large amount of overtime in the first 3 months.
Sure.
We've got we got a plan that's working very, very well, barring these big storms and things like that. So the other thing is that, if you look in the fire department's budget, they use a lot of overtime, to cover some of these shift vacancies. But that shift coverage wage is $226,000. Last year, a lot of overtime was offset 226 because when they're covering overtime, that means that shift coverage is for the other per diem and call people that are so, hopefully covering some of those shifts. And when they can't fill them, they can offset their wages with that line too. So that's a big savings there for them to be able to absorb that hit.
How is he looking, going back to the worksheet that he had, not this worksheet?
Sure.
But the, reviewing the budget for the fire department, going back to the equipment,
Mm-hmm.
uniforms, electricity. How is he planning, offsetting $8,000 for electricity on line 303?
So, when they pitched the budget, when the former chief pitched the budget in 23, he did I want to say that they had estimated, I want to say it was like a 23% increase across the board, and he has all three stations in his budget. And I can tell you what the difference is here. I brought this sheet in with me too, so I could tell you what the difference is.
Okay. I'm just looking at his calculations for uniforms, equipment.
Yep.
8,000.
Yep.
He's at 10,000, 7,000, 8,000.
And
Building fuel 35, and I'm wondering how he's coming up with those figures.
Well, what he's doing is he's doing just like the budget committee does when they start looking at it. They're going through actuals for like a 3-year time frame because he's a new chief to our department. He's not as familiar with the historical spending. So he's looking at the actuals going back. He did some historical data research on their spending habits. And he's seeing that over the last several years, they've really foregone some of these areas in order to cover their deficits and shift coverage and overtime. And that specific question that you had about the fire, about the
Electricity on line 303.
yeah. Too many pages. Oh, here it is. So going into 303. So in 23, with the increase that they were projecting then, for all three stations, he budgeted 23,000.
Okay.
But going in after 23, going through all of last year, the request for 24 was only 16,000, and that was based on actual usage.
Okay.
So what happened is before we went into the year, the power companies were pitching this big, be prepared. This is what the increase is going to be. Eversource was higher than the co-op, and they were trying to even it out. And he had all three stations that he had to estimate for. We did that for almost every building in the town. Well, fortunately, those big hikes that they were projecting weren't realized. There was increases, but they weren't that crazy. So after last year, that was one of the things that we tried to do in 24 moving forward to sort of offset things, was to reduce a lot of those costs based on actual numbers. But because we went to default, it went right back to those
back to
numbers.
that high numbers.
Yeah,
So we have that little bit.
right.
There's a little cushion there. So,
Yeah.
so he's calculating that number from the cushion.
Yeah.
of-
From the
of-
actual,
from the actual
history usage.
history usage of
Yeah.
the 16,000 versus the 23,000.
Yes.
Have a good night.
Have
you
a good
guys.
evening, guys. Thank you.
Was just getting started. Come on. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
So he
Yeah.
did the same thing with uniforms, new equipment, building fuel,
yeah.
PPE.
And I mean, with new equipment, they usually, some of that line, they originally had money in there to outfit new people, but they're not hiring any more new people
Right.
now. they can't bring them on, so the money that they would have in those equipment lines for new hires and things like that, they're not gonna be, they'll, you know, they won't need to expend that fully or anything, so.
Okay.
Um. Plus, the chief's been taking, you know, working hard over the last few months, when just in there taking inventory of everything.
Sure.
Taking inventory of what they have for equipment and what they have for PPE, what they have for stock, making sure that, you know, the purchasing and everything is
Right,
tight.
'cause between the equipment and the PPE, I mean, he's got 10,000 on each line,
Yeah.
that he's able to offset.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm sure he's been researching all that very well.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And like I said, the fire department is fortunate too in that sense, and so is the board, that the more, cause you know, 90, or I shouldn't say, yeah, probably close to 90, maybe at least 85% of their call volume is EMS. And because they have the revolving fund and the money, the revenue coming in on that, the ambulance revolving fund's got almost $900,000 in it. Not that we want to expend that recklessly, but at the same time, it's legitimate that almost 90% of our full-time staff that's at the fire department is running EMS. You know, call after call.
Yeah.
So if we get down to it toward the end of the year, you know, that's a decision that the board would have to make, and with the chief, that, you know, if we're not able to realize all the savings, we can still offset some of that down the end of the, you know, toward the end of the year.
Yeah.
And I mean, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be anything to say, you know, $75,000 if we have some high overtime costs through the summer when we start getting busy. You know, 75,000 over 900 to $1 million is gonna put a big huge dent in it.
No. No.
The other thing is emergency management has $11,000 in it. It all depends on, you know, if we have any more incidents. We don't have payroll out of that, but we always keep 10 grand in for preparation and response. And usually when we have big incidents, you know, that's covered under the departments themselves, and then we get reimbursed through FEMA. This would be sort of more like if we did open a full-blown shelter and we had expenses, or I had to go to Hannaford to get water or something along those lines, that's where we pull these incidental expenses out of. So this last storm, we would have been utilizing that as well. If power hadn't come back when it did, because we were gonna end up using fire staff to staff shelter requirements and warming stations. And that's another thing that we would use that money for, is if I had to pull employees to work those sort of shelters and
Those shelters at
stations
that
and
time,
stuff. So that would be more of part of the response. And then we already talked about public works.
Yeah, we looked at that.
Is that street lighting line item, is that also potential realization of electrical savings?
Yes, but not quite as drastic as the buildings. There's going to be the street lights didn't realize much of an increase like the residential and commercial, you know, building use. Their per month cost is more fixed. But there's probably going to be a few $1,000s in there traditionally. But it's not gonna be a huge jump.
Is there any way to get this, a copy of this budget worksheet that has the actual 2023 expenses listed?
Oh, for the year?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. I can get you some actuals. And then solid waste, that, like I said, there's no wage lines in solid waste. That's all under DPW highway.
Okay.
So that's being absorbed in Scott's highway budget. The rest of this and solid waste, a lot of this is contracted fees.
Right.
Waste transportation, demo transportation, all that stuff, waste oil.
Demo, waste oil, yeah.
Yeah. He probably will realize some electricity savings. It won't be $8,000 like the fire department, but he's probably gonna have between $2,000 and $3,000 in electrical savings there too.
But he's still working on that as far as the, what can be offset.
Yeah, there's not a lot
There's
in
not a
his,
lot.
a lot of the,
It's
cause this is more geared towards, like I said, his contractors for his contracts in building fuel and, you know, basically regular operating costs that
Yeah.
are gonna have to be in there. He will be able to work on, like, he's got 20, so on line 140, or excuse me, 139, he's got a general expense. He's gonna work on not expending any of that general expense unless he, you know, has someone foreseen cost that pops up.
Okay.
And then the other one, you know, an equipment expense. Hopefully realize some savings there. He won't be able to use it all, but
What is the landfill monitoring?
landfill monitoring is the required DES reports. We have an outside company that comes in and they do all the gas testing on the monitor wells.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's what.
So
that-
basically they're checking the area all around the cap and they provide photographs and a report quarterly. Traditionally, right now, I should say historically, not traditionally, but historically, you know, unless we get a real uptick in welfare clients, there's usually some savings realized in the bottom line of that budget. Cause we have a general expense of 18,000, plus we have the Heike room, we have some other accounts that are available on specific situations. I forget what the other one is called out of West Alton, but West Alton had when they dissolved the West Alton Association there. There's a fund there for that one too.
Do you know what the Heike,
It's just called the West Alton Association Fund.
do you know what the Heike room, fund has in it?
Has in it?
Do you have any idea?
I think I might have that right here.
Just curious. If you can't find that, so that's all right.
Let me check one place. I got a list of capital reserves, but I don't know if Heike's on this list or not. I'm not sure it's on this one. It's probably on the trustees.
Okay.
Oh, wait, no. Here it is. So the Heike Fund has $1,153,932.
Okay.
So we're pretty healthy there.
Yeah, so I thought it was high. That's
Yeah.
why I wanted to know, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing with the Heike.
We're limited on what that can be used for.
Yeah, it's for seniors that are trying to age in their
Right.
homes in Alton.
Right, okay. Thank you.
So-
That's what I was, that's what I recalled. So,
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Sorry to make you go through that.
No, that's okay. But that's another thing is that that's why we did reduce the Heike Fund expense in 802 to 5,000. Cause we can expend money out of the Heike Fund for that reason, for the reason of aging seniors in
Yeah.
there upon an application, because it's all part of the trust. And Stacy has that authority as the, you know, welfare officer to be able to do that under clients that meet that criteria. Doesn't mean whether or not we have 5,000 in here or not. So if we get overrun with a bunch with some seniors that are trying to stay in their home and they're having some real hard times, we're not just limited to that money. We can go to the trust.
Okay.
It was just one of those things. We used to put 25 to 40,000 in here, but then you're appropriating that and raising that in the operating budget when it's already in the
It's already
trust.
in the trust.
So,
Right. Okay. Thank you.
yes. Um. Recreation Department, Kelly submitted she has an email right on top. I think it's the very top one. Right here from Parks and Rec, then,
It's regulation.
it's probably underneath those ones right there. I think it's this first one. Yeah, so she's got lines identified, part-time wages. And that part-time wages is we haven't been able to, they haven't been able to hire lifeguards for 3 years now because we weren't paying enough money for anybody to apply.
Couldn't even get them.
So we, and since COVID, we weren't staffing them anyways. So it made sense that, seeing how we don't staff a full-time lifeguard and we haven't forever. That when their lifeguard's not on duty, they just put a sign up anyways that says swim at your own risk and, no lifeguard on duty. And we're, for our recreational areas, it doesn't make sense that we don't just keep the signage up and tell them that we don't, there was no lifeguard on duty, that you
Right.
swim at your own risk,
Exactly.
minors should be accompanied by their, adults or parents, things like that. So
Right.
that's where those part-time wages were.
On,
And
on the recreations on line number 112 for the travel and mileage is 650.
oh, you're talking about in the budget?
In the budget
In the
itself,
budget
Recreation
itself.
Department,
Yeah.
112.
Yeah.
650 and then meetings and conferences of 500.
Mm-hmm.
Is the 650, the travel and mileage is for what?
Travel miles would be if they didn't have a town vehicle available to go. Then they put
They're
in,
using their own vehicle.
they're using their personal vehicle for a training, then they would put in for mileage at the federal rate.
But
Just
that's
65.
only employs one person, right?
What do you mean?
So this recreation department is only employing one person?
No, there's two.
Oh, there's two, okay.
Yeah, cause they have a full-time, Emily is a full-time.
Oh,
employee
Right,
down
right,
there.
right.
I thought she was under the,
But the 650,
Highway
I mean,
department.
how often?
No,
How often
she's,
they be using their own vehicles? To do any, I mean,
let me-
specific travel?
honestly, I don't know how often it is.
Do they have a vehicle down there?
I don't think she has.
But she doesn't have any
has-
vehicles down there anymore. 'cause
Oh,
they
right,
used
so
to
they
'cause
use
they're-
their own vehicles.
Yeah, all
Okay.
the time now.
But I mean, how often do they have to go out of town for anything, or was that just, I'm just thinking the $650, I have to agree,
Curious.
$650 budgeted
Mm-hmm.
to go where? I mean, they're primarily usually at the facility, correct?
Yeah,
And not-
I mean, that's usually, mileage is usually only for when you send people to training, in-service training, things like that.
Okay.
Out of the air, to a conference or something like that, but, I'm just looking to see,
Mhm.
I actually have, let me see if anything's expended out of it yet. I'd have to look at the actuals to find out really like what their average is and their expending.
I just
d-
didn't like, we're pulling from line number 883, we're pulling from the old home week $400, but that one didn't get touched at all.
Mhm. That's not to say it won't get touched though.
No,
Just because,
It was just a question.
yeah,
And
I
concert.
don't know, they
she's got
used
less,
$200 this year. I'm not sure where they were going yet. But this year's period expenditures for the year, they've expended $200.
We're just barely through the first quarter and they've already spent 30%.
Yep. They have 69, well, they have 69% through the first quarter left.
Well, the only reason I'm asking, I know that you watch the pennies, and the dollars watch themselves type situation.
Yeah,
Just curious.
yeah.
And then the other one is a
The
normal.
ones that come through me are usually a lot bigger than the 25 or the 65 cent mileage ones. Those go to Laura, but I can definitely pull those numbers.
You don't have
for
to pull
sure.
them. No, you don't
Yeah,
have to pull 'em.
no,
I just was curious if it was.
yeah.
And
Well, the other thing I'm wondering too is what was, actually, I got another, I brought as many cheats as I could in here because just because it's 650 in there right now, that was 23. And I'm not sure if that was the full merger with DPW then, because I wanna,
Oh,
let
if
me
we-
see.
You mean when they were using the van, her personal van type sit? I gotcha.
Because.
But but she's already expended. How much did you say?
30%.
30%.
31%.
So it's on track.
The 30% so far.
I'm just curious as to what they budgeted now. Um. Everything's easy to find. Um. No. 4520.
Federal wage rate, that's about 280 miles. Right, isn't it about 70 cents now?
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's 68. That's mine.
That was this one.
Yeah, for some reason I can't, but I'm not gonna hold you up.
No, I was just
Flip
inquiring.
through. Well, I was trying to figure out what was, because, you know, there are a lot of lines in 24 that they made adjustments to try to compensate and cut back on some of these areas, but I can't, actually, I can tell you.
Well, it's a pretty tiny fish in the pond. I think we.
Yeah,
can,
exactly. We can move
I
on.
was just inquiring.
We
Yeah,
can,
no.
we can move on.
Yeah, we got
You stumped them with that one.
I didn't mean to.
No, I got you.
We got.
Cause I got another book over here.
I know.
I'm gonna keep you.
No,
Oh, I got it. Hey.
because I was gonna say concerts too, because it's going from a budget of usually 5,500 down to 18.
No,
18.
that's the same,
Same scenario.
correct, it was the same budgeted amount, so.
Okay.
I don't know why I didn't go to that book sooner. Anyway,
Just inquiring.
no, that's just for asking questions like that, Nick, I'm gonna keep you here half the night. What?
Here we go.
Yeah, made that very clear already?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the important thing to be looking at, you know, kind of on a global is that she's made the recreational department has made a
She's covered them.
9%, you know,
Yes.
basic slashing.
yes.
You know, I mean, that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can move on to the library.
Library,
Uh-huh.
in the scheme of things with the library. I talked to Holly today, she's got some ideas, she didn't submit anything to me, but I wasn't. They're gonna remember, they have their trustees of they have their trust fund. So any areas that they're not able to cover or whatnot through there, they can offset with their trust fund,
Okay,
which they have that ability.
and we'll get that
True.
information.
Yeah, through the, well, their trustees can make that decision.
Okay,
So they're the only ones that still have a, trust, you know, a board of trustees
trustee.
that vote and approve on their budgets and expenditures and funds.
Okay,
I. And then going into the Gillum Museum. There's really not much in there other than maybe a little bit of savings realized, and I mean, I don't think we need any new equipment over there.
no,
So there's $500 and then building expense and turfs and grounds, I think we could probably, I don't think we'll have a lot going on. We put the new sign in, that donation of the new sign, so.
Okay.
So there's a little bit there coming out of the Gilman Museum. Patriotic services, we don't have any savings there unless we can cut out one of the fireworks displays, but that didn't go over well when I suggested that to the budget committee.
No, yeah, and that's morale.
Yeah, no, I get it.
And-
I get it.
And same thing with concerts. I was looking at that as well, and those kind of things.
That's why I was.
People look
That's why I
forward-
was asking if it would offset the.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, with the concert thing, I'm not necessarily know that whether or not she's gonna cut the number of concerts or if there's.
That's what she spent.
There
the
was an
last-
overage. Yeah, there maybe there was.
I
an
think there
overage.
was because you
There was
gotta,
an overage on it.
because you gotta, there's a little bit of an overage, and the other thing is they have some conflicting events, so we've reduced some of the dates because of other events going on. But the other thing is I think they also have they always have a few rain cancellations, and you can't really get those back, so. But I don't think she's really trying, I don't think she's trying to reduce the
Okay.
the amount of entertainment, because I know that's still very important,
Mhm.
Nothing in conservation.
so.
No, Conservation Commission, no.
General expenses you might be able to.
We get a lot of overtime wages in the Conservation Commission.
No, I believe that the overtime in conservation is because they have they're paying a secretary to do their minutes and organization. I believe that stipend is for Cat in building
Mhm.
because she stays over and runs their meetings.
Okay.
One of the things I've never asked before, where's the Lake monitoring?
Lake Lake monitoring is, you had to ask me that. Cause I got asked that at the budget committee presentation and I had to go back and ask Kat, they had to explain to me. So Lay Lake is a program. It's not, I thought it was an actual lake and I was kind of stumped.
No,
Yeah.
no, I think
So
this is.
Lay Lake monitoring is a monitoring program that's administered through UNH.
Uh-huh.
And it capitalizes on the Winnipesaukee watershed and Marion Meeting and all that.
Okay.
But it's a monitoring program that they pay UNH to do some of the testing and things like that. Most of it is paid for through UN. I mean, most of it's like a program
I
through
thought
UNH.
UNH did a lot of
But
that.
we do have to pay for some of the ancillary like testing and services, some of the transportation and sampling. So. Oops. I think that's pretty much it. Short-term interest is you only got $1.
Got it. All right. Cut the thing. Offset the dollar.
Yes.
All right.
So, and like I said, my plan was to sort of go through and get an overview of where we're looking at and sort of make sure that you knew that we have a general plan.
Well,
We're gonna put
yes.
the plan into work, into play.
Yeah.
I do have a department head meeting next week, next Thursday. So we're gonna have a face-to-face and the main topic of discussion is spending and the budget and making sure that everybody's on the same page. I mean, I think the emails and the correspondence is a pretty good, step in the right direction, but I want to make sure that we all sit down face to face and have that discussion and everybody knows that we're all going to be covering each other moving forward to the bottom line to make sure that our employees are taken care of and,
And all I ask is that we have an update if we can, every meeting. If there's possible, because we meet every 2 weeks. As a rule, if we could just have some sort of, from some of the departments that weren't able to give us any information at this time, if you know what I mean,
Mhm.
and just let us know how we're doing.
Yeah, I can do that.
Even
with
if
a-
we don't do it every meeting, every other meeting?
So every month, once a month.
Once a month?
At the first of the month, finance does their normal reporting where they pull every operating budget. They
Okay.
have actual expenses, plus that's where I get my percentages.
Mhm.
So we've expended, like I said, we still have 74.7% right now, for the year. You'll have actually, I can
have
get
some
you
numbers.
every single
That's-
department.
that's what I'm
and
asking
everything.
for.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I'm
So,
asking for, at
yeah,
least once a month.
Once a month.
Let's
would-
have that
would-
once a month, and like Drew said, if we can get the actual
Yeah, those will be on. there,
actual amounts for 2023,
Mm-hmm.
will help.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, anybody?
No, it was good.
I think that was good. We went over everything, and I appreciate all the work that was put into that. Okay, so we'll move on to, I think that was it for new business and old business.
Mhm.
Selectmen reports. Mr. Drew,
I have no reports.
okay?
I have no report.
I also have no reports.
Okay, the only report I have is the ZBA was canceled and moved on to next month, because of the storm. And I also, speaking of the storm, I wanted to thank our staff, DPW and fire department, police department for all the work that they did during the crisis of the storm that we had, that hit us good, hit us hard. There was a lot of issues with power, a lot of issues with with traveling through town and traveling and helping people out and helping each other out. I think the town came together quite well. And I just wanted to put a thank you out there to all our staff.
Yes.
I agree.
I agree.
Most definitely.
Town administrator report.
Okay, I just got a couple of quick things. What are you laughing about?
Not many.
Shocker, right? Hey, you're gonna love this
Didn't,
first
I
one.
thought you were gonna say it didn't have
You're
any.
gonna love this first one. So on the reorganization of the board, we made a mistake and because some members can't hold more than one board if they conflict. And guess what? You're the only one that doesn't hold the conflicting one, so you gotta take Conservation Commission away from Nick, because Nick can't sit on, you can't do planning and conservation.
He can't do both.
But you can't do planning and you can't do zoning and conservation either. So that takes out
That takes
Paul
me in, that
and
takes me in.
Dick off of that because Dick's the alternate. And Drew and Nick are on planning board and alternates. So you're the lone ranger on that one.
So
Congratulations.
so all I have is a conservation, is that what you're saying, or I got like 4 of them now?
You got 4.
No, you got on that list in the binder there was a.
Yeah, it's like. Did see
I
it.
think you
Oh,
got-
it's gonna be-
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
he's got
that's-
3 now.
He's got 3.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a list in there, so,
Yeah.
you'll have 1, 2,
That's not bad. I thought, well, the way you were talking.
3. No, you got 3. You're
Yeah,
good.
that's not bad. So I'm just adding the conservation.
Yeah,
Conservation,
Yeah.
that's it. What else do you have?
That's not as, okay.
that's not as bad as you thought it was gonna be.
That gives you-
I was like,
Yeah.
Thought you were gonna get 4 more, right?
Yeah,
Um,
or just a couple bad ones.
I just need to get, the board's permission to, Tom Dukowski from the water department came to me and asked if, they could get permission to burn at Jones Field. They had quite a bit of debris come down at Jones
Oh.
Field from the storm and they've piled everything. And he's talked to the fire chief and there's not a problem on that end.
Mhm.
But anything that's owned, the property owner has to sign off on it, which is the town of Alton. So I told him I would mention it to the board to see if you guys
They'll
had
do a
any
good-
problem, as long as.
Just do a good cleanup.
Oh, yeah, the fire department will be overseeing all that stuff
Mhm.
anyway, so I just didn't want, you see smoke coming on of Jones Field, and think the snack shack
Not in the
went
center
up.
of the field or anything, is it?
No,
No, it's
not in the
out,
center of the
out
field,
towards
right?
the
Yeah, I
River Lake
There'll-
entrance
there'll be
there.
a controlled burn and then they'll clean up after.
Yeah, I think they're bringing an engine down there too,
Okay.
just to stand by, just,
Hopefully they
just
bring
because it's
themselves some
town,
food
town
and
property.
relax after a job well done the
Yeah.
last couple storms.
Yeah, and the last thing I got is, so I got contacted by Bill Lambert over at DOT. And So we got a problem with the intersection at Cherry Valley Road and Route 11. So ever since West Alton Marina did their renovation and their extension, that intersection looks like it continues into the marina. We've had Todd has contacted and reached out to DOT.
I've heard.
There's been a lot of residents now that have reached out because we've had about 6 crashes there. Somebody's gonna get killed. Because what's happening is people that aren't familiar with the area are driving straight down Cherry Valley, right into the driveway of West Alton Marina across Route 11.
I thought West Alton Marina was gonna move that entrance, though.
I think they basically opened it up and widened it.
It's worse.
Yeah, it's worse now. It's worse because you remember back before they cut that whole thing down. So there used to be that banking and
Yes.
it was pretty clear you weren't driving up over that. But now that they cut all that down and you basically, it's all one plane. It's really deceiving. So, so the first thing that Bill wanted to run by me is he said, I know it's Alton, but he says in a situation like this that we usually put transverse rumble strips in it. He said, but I wanted to run that by you before we suggested that. And I said, yeah, he goes, I don't really think that would be very popular. And I said, no, not in this community.
It won't be.
So the other option to consider, and we don't have to make a decision tonight unless you want to. Actually, you know what? I should probably get a cost to you because the other option is we have the option is the community. The state doesn't do it because they have their programs and their programs are the rumble strips and things like that. But he said that they would support us if we wanted to put get one of the stop signs with the indicator lights on it.
Yep.
So that there's some sort of flashing, attention getter.
Yeah.
We can even do something, cause up the road, before you even get to the intersection, there's a stop sign, a head sign, like a cautionary sign
Yes.
Yeah.
that you could flash too.
I think
I
that's
I
our
think
best.
that's the most
Yeah,
important.
I agree.
That's the way we should go.
Yeah, I figured that was gonna be the best option, so I wanted to run it by you, but I don't have a cost for that yet, cause he just sent back. I thought I was gonna get the state to pay. for
Let's
it.
get a cost on that. And that's the way we should go.
Okay.
Right, in my opinion.
So I'll proceed in that direction and I'll get some more info back to you guys to make a decision on that.
Good.
Believe it or not, Andy, I'm all done.
That was 3.
We don't have any minutes to approve. Michael,
No.
so, we're gonna move on from that. Consent agenda approval.
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as written.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, a request for appointment. Joyce Wallace, Alton Bay request. And that was way back here.
I read this one, yeah. We want to do the.
Where was it?
In the very last page in the book, last time.
This one, there it is. This was back in the 70s. They did the donuts.
Yep.
The only issue we had, and I remember going back some years back when there used to be popcorn being sold down, and it became an issue with the brick and mortar buildings and being an issue with utilizing parking spaces that are public parking spaces, and it was an issue where it was decided not to do it anymore at the time, and then that's why we no longer have vendors going down in the bay doing utilizing, even if it's on the grassy area, they have to park there and utilize an area. So I guess all I'm saying is that
We'd be setting a precedent.
setting a precedent where we took away something and now we're saying yes to something else, and I think we're gonna get hit hard on it.
So you say that the original reason why it was stopped had a lot to do with the competition with the local brick and mortar that are
It
in
was
that
brick and
area?
mortar because, let's put it this way, there were other people that wanted to sell things like hot dogs. And it was a hot dog stand, that directly adversely affected some of the businesses down in the bay that are brick and mortar. So they were upset. Yeah, and it wasn't all of them, it was a few of them at the time, that if they sold hot dogs, hamburgers, and things like that, it was gonna adversely affect the brick and mortar businesses that were there. Not to mention they were taking up spaces, even if they paid the town for $50 or $100 fee for being in the parking lot, it was taking up public space. And they were doing this on special events. Well, when that was decided not to have that any longer, if I remember this correctly, stop me
Mhm.
anytime.
Nope.
That also affected the popcorn people and they were asked not to come back because of it.
It really, if I don't, you don't mind me elaborating on it.
Nope.
From what I remember that, and I was distinctly remember the discussions as well about that competition with the brick and mortar, but it came down to, we were charging like $50 for them to rent a parking space. They'd be there only on the peak hours. They had no overhead and they weren't paying taxes, but they were costing the brick and mortar buildings if they were directly competing with the same products. So you had the hot dogs, then you had hamburgers, but the other big one is we got a lot of requests for ice cream trucks. So you got 2 ice cream places down there that are, that are in business, and then you had the food trucks that wanted to rent places, not only ice cream truck, but you had, you'd have, any other local.
The only other thing that we did have that came up at one time that was approved, and that was the sale of vegetables. If we remember, across the street, it wasn't in the parking lot, it was in the other parking lot on the other side, adjacent to Pop's Clamshell, where at the time they were asking for permission to be able to sell produce. And that was granted. And
Yeah.
even though they never used it.
Yeah, it was like that was more
They
like, that
never
was like a
used it.
farm stand or
Nothing
something.
like a vegetable stand to really draw the public in.
Yeah, they never used it, so.
When I was a kid, there was. We used to
Corn.
sell, blueberry, I sold everything down there.
Yeah.
Like it was a.
Like a farmer's market.
Farmers market, and that's what they applied for,
Mhm.
and that was approved, I think, like 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and for those people to specifically use it for that across the street, like I said, like near Pops. But they never used it, they never came down. Once. I specifically remember, yes, you're right, it was once that I remember they came down. Did you? Yeah, maybe it was only a few of them that I remember that only went once. There was more than one person, and I'm thinking of one in specific, which was, Precious Gardens, only went once. Yeah. So, all right, either way, it's just, do we want to grant her time to come in and discuss it, or no?
I don't want to give her false hopes if we're intent on possibly not doing it. I mean, I don't. If we're not gonna grant other people permits to do other types of businesses, I'm really not seeing how we could in this case.
I'm only going by what our history, and I think our history, I'm describing that correctly, am I not?
Yes. Is there a way to respond to this and to make it clear that the likelihood is very slim? But if they would like to come in and get a better understanding of why, then they're welcome to.
No, we can do whatever you'd like. I did tell her, I mean, I spoke to her directly on the phone. And I did explain to her, I said, look, I'm not, and I told the same thing. I said, look, I'm not gonna discourage you from requesting anything to the board. But I do want to prepare you that there was some concern about, lately, or historically with renting. We used to rent because they're going back to the day where we had an active policy.
Yes, we
Where
did.
we rented parking spaces. It just became a practice that became controversial with other businesses, and they ultimately ended up, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't a revenue stream for the town that was really profitable enough to really.
Warren upset in the business.
Yeah.
Pay the high taxes.
Right.
Plus, the bay's gotten so busy that it became an issue with taking up parking
Parking
spaces.
spaces, exactly, and that was my point.
I agree with Drew. Yeah, write her a letter and,
Yeah.
explain to her, call her.
Um.
Yeah, that's a,
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it, instead of, wasting her time and our time in a meeting. Well, if we could send her a letter and explaining it that way. Does that work for, does
oh, I'm fine with that.
that work for you guys? Drew?
Works
You
for
happy with
me.
that?
I think it's a great idea.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Drew. All right, then. I would open this to public input for 5 minutes on anything, but I don't see anyone here, so I will close that. We have no non-public
Nope.
session tonight.
Nope.
Entertain an adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Whoa, that was quick. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All right.
So, yeah, we're selected, right? Are you a select woman?